How's it going, everyone? And welcome to another episode of No Excuses with two of your favorite show hosts, Aristil.
And Volacel and Fern passed out just before the show. He was not able to. He was not able to maintain a strong hand going forward because he has been flat out all weekend on their sort of like their climactic finale of their rodeo season. So he reckons he's going to be clear for a few weeks, but right now he's got no energy left.
Yeah, work happens. And right now, his work's the one being the super button eaten into Showtime. So mine may eat into Showtime in 2 weeks. My little trip I have to take to Ohio. We're in Heritage Found. We're going to be doing some debates again on the show, and we'll see where we get.
Octal used to call the mistake by the lake.
Yes. Um, I do recall him calling a state that, but I do not remember which one. I'm not a member of that region of the country. I'm quite out of my comfort zone. Oh, oh no,
They arrived.
they're here.
Why must they ruin everything?
I kind of want to abandon this plan now. I definitely want to abandon this plan now.
Why is it always like this?
I don't. I don't. Want to do my scenario roulette instead?
I mean, we can do that. I haven't thought about who I want to take there.
I'll pick
Probably a hero
around
or
you.
something.
I'll pick a breaker or something.
I'll take Sage, I guess. Good grief.
Yeah, screw this noise. All right. Turn to a gunbreaker. Out of combat. I'll turn. Why do other your MMO is designed so that other people are a problem? You fuck something up. Hard to swear this early in the show, but man, Final Fantasy.
Yeah, it's just this is not entirely Squeenix's fault. This is also just like a byproduct of older design theories meets the modern gamer who is hyper focused, toxically hyper focused on economizing everything.
Yeah.
Like that, it is useful to have free travel between worlds, but this is the penalty you pay: is you have too many tourists.
Yeah. All right. Let's see how it goes.
Yeah. My controller, main.
So, shtick. That's where we left off.
Yes, indeed. If you'd like to get involved with the show, you can do so by sending us email at noexcusesvtw@gmail.com. You can follow us on the Twitter at noexcusesvtw, or you can join us in the Discord server, which you can get to by clicking on the link provided in the show description underneath the show archive on YouTube.
Yes, indeed. So our weeks are. I have a good bit of media because I have not talked about my media for 2.5 weeks. Because we kept going on Final Fantasy rants. So I have a bit of backlog plus what got done this week to yammer on about. Paul, you didn't have such an active week.
Not really. I did not have a lot of energy left at the end of the day. I had one of those weeks where everything just goes wrong after each one after the next. Every day somebody will come to my office looking contrite and admit something terrible has happened, and I just ended up buried under reports and government inquiries and that sort of thing. The government is the government is attempting to get rid of some bureaucrats, which means all the bureaucrats are furiously trying to justify the existence of their job. And the upshot of all of that is that they are all trying to look obviously busy and important. And since I am regulated and part of the regulatory structure that they're in charge of, a lot of it comes down on me in various ways. So yeah, I'm unhappily attracting a lot of attention from them right now, which means I am constantly in the position of answering all of their silly questions. So, yeah. This has drained an awful lot of my energy over the course of the week, and we've also dealt with heaps of people have been getting sick at work lately as well. It seems to be going around again, and previously this happened about once a year, but ever since COVID, it's happened, you know, more like 5 or 6 times per year. But I won't say anything more about that because commenting about that and the possible causative agents of such a change in epidemiology are the sorts of things that get you permabanned from YouTube because they are very committed to their narrative.
Indeed.
But yeah, I've been busy and dealing with a bunch of problems, and they don't look like they're going away anytime soon. Not until the government regulatory structure gets pruned. I saw an email to one of our higher ups about some uh, import permissions that had been applied for, um, which was sort of interesting because the functionary in charge of that straight up said, "Oh, I'm not going to do any more work than I absolutely have to. I'm only going to do 40 hours in a week, and the reason for this is that I don't feel that they've given me enough help. So we will process your request when we get round to it, and not a second sooner."
I see.
So yeah, I was not particularly impressed, but this is about what you expect from the government. Not really much to be done about that. Just gotta muscle on through. But yeah, so gaming wise, not much went on this week as far as I am concerned. It is uh pre-fest, I guess I would call it, for Blue Archive. So double drop rate for 3 stars, which didn't matter worth a damn because I still had to pull to Spark to get Dressina. But yeah, I built her up quite quickly because I'd been conserving materials for her because she's a very effective unit to use as a sort of like anti-material turret. She's got an ability that roots her in place and gives her uh, three line AoEs that you can choose to use in succession as a replacement EX skill for 0 cost. And each shot does a pretty colossal amount of damage what she's built up. So she's an extremely good boss murderer character, much like Mika. She's not as flexible as Mika because she has to root herself in place and stop doing her auto attacks in order to use her big nuke, but she also gets 3 of them. So yeah, certainly an effective unit. Uh, I actually got heaps and heaps of 3-star units out of my previous pull since I had to pull all the way to Spark, but most of them don't really move the needle. Like they're not really things that I particularly needed,
Well,
not really filling any particular gaps in my roster.
at least some of them were new characters instead of just more Ligma.
Some of them were new characters, yes. Um, Most of them ones that I don't particularly need or characters I don't particularly like. Like I got both versions of Shigure, for instance, who I don't even know what Shigure does, other than get drunk, G-rated drunk, because it's definitely not alcohol in that hip flask. Yes. Anyway, so yeah, there's not really much going on in there at the moment other than double drops from pulls. Um, the main event for me this week, gaming wise, was the deployment of the new patch for Honkai Star Rail. I haven't been able to commit a lot of time to it just yet, but it has come with the release of Yunli on the banner, and her banner partner this time is Huohuo, which is a bit. Huohuo is a character who I don't quite like enough to pull for, who would be really useful, but just like, well, I don't actually need her, and she's not exactly in the center of my target radius. So yeah, I guess I won't pull her this time, but this is also her second run, so no character has ever been run on the banner 3 times. And as such, nobody knows what that will look like or what it will take for it to happen or anything like that. So yeah, it's a bit bit of a mystery situation whether or not it's going to be, 6 months is what it's normally roughly, give or take, before a character gets rerun on the banner. But nobody's been rerun twice, so nobody knows is it going to be 6 months again. But the roster's expanding, so surely that won't be 6 months again. It will be even longer, but we don't know how longer or anything like that. So I don't know if I'll ever get Wowo at this point. But Wowo's main role in my roster would be to be the sustain for a dot team. But since dot hasn't gotten a lot of support in the meta lately, building more power into my dot team is probably not necessarily the way to go long term. I have 2 other teams that are both powerful, so that might be the better way to go. Hard to say though, really hard to say. I'm not playing very well, paying very much attention. The the character Yunli is, by contrast, a totally different archetype. If I were to pull for her, that would be basically signaling my entry into building a counterattack team. Counterattack currently has 2 characters primarily. There are some that are sort of like arguably on the periphery of that, but not quite in the center, like Blade. But mostly it's just Clara and Yunli. And Clara and Yunli are both physical destruction path, which seems kind of weird. And there's a strong argument that that Yunli directly power creeps Clara, but Clara does work a little bit differently, and I think that the power creeping is not sufficiently great that if you did have Clara, you would probably just skip Yunli on in mechanical terms on the principle that you've already got that character. But the main reason I think people pulling for Yunli is because they're feet people.
Why?
It always comes down to feet people.
Why are
Because
feet
Yunli is
people?
always barefoot. Clara
Why?
is also always barefoot.
No, no, no. I know that part. But why do feet people?
Pretty sure there's a Stone Toss comic about that. Anyway, so yeah, I probably won't pull on this banner. Next banner, I'll probably be a lot more tempted because I kind of like Lingsha as a character, from what I've seen of her, and she seems basically like a version of Gallagher that doesn't leave me in a panic every time things haven't quite gone the right way. Like Gallagher's a really good 4-star abundance. Like I use him on one of my main teams, even though he's only 4-star. But he just has a habit of when the timing doesn't line up quite right, or the battle just drags on a fraction longer than I expect it to, things can go very sharply south because his like turn over turn healing sustain is entirely based on how often he can pull out his ultimate. And if it isn't quite often enough for whatever reason, then things start to go very pear-shaped very quickly. And he's definitely a good character, and I've got him at C6, so he's an extremely good character in that sense. But I think Lingsha would do the same job, except with more stability, less unpredictability, more able to deal with situations where things have gotten out of hand while still being able to put out a reasonable amount of damage for an abundance. Because she's a healer that scales primarily with attack. But yeah, and then following up on her will be Fei Xiao, who is another follow-up attacker. Like it seems like Hoyo is pushing follow-up attack really hard, but I think that 5-star has more or less become oversaturated with follow-up attackers in the most recent patches. So I would think that they're going to start to move away from that before too long, because you aren't going to be able to get as many people to pull on something once they've got a full team full of them. Like, you kind of need, if you wanted to build a full follow-up attack team, like the key members would be probably Topaz and Aventurine, and then you would stick in with them some other set of follow-up attackers, or you might put in Robin as an additional support, and then you'd pick somebody else like Dr. Ratio for single target or Jade for multi-target or whatever. But currently you're kind of spoilt for choice when you're building up follow-up attack teams, and General Fei Xiao is like, she's wind element follow-up attacker who looks extremely powerful based on the sort of sketchy outlines I've seen of her design that are going around in the rumors, but it doesn't really seem like she's, unless you really, really need a wind hunt character, it seems like, well, she's good and all, but I don't really think that she's a hard replacement for any of the others. Like, she might be better because she's newer, and newer characters are always better in Ho-Yo games, even if it's only by a barely measurable degree. They tend to move forward unless your name is Daya. But yeah, I'm not really sure exactly where they're going design-wise, that they would keep pushing forward with follow-up attack when, you know, the break archetype is sort of it's been put in place recently and sort of has exactly enough pieces to work. They're not really supporting it very aggressively, and the Acheron team is sort of like getting support at the same sort of pace as Breakers, but the Dot team is getting no support whatsoever. Like, it still revolves entirely around using Kafka and Black Swan together, plus one other, in the hopes that you can find one other that will fit, which is usually someone like Gwen Ifen or, you know, someone like that. But yeah, or realistically, that team most classically manifests as Huo Huo and Black Swan and Kafka and Ruanmei. That's the most common form. But Ruanmei is in a lot of demand for break teams. Although, because break teams use Firefly, you could make an argument for Robin as well. But Robin's strongly favoured in follow-up teams. So there's sort of like, somebody's going to end up with the Bronya if you've got a Bronya, or Sparkle if you've got a Sparkle. Not everybody can have Ranmei in their team, unfortunately. She's just an extremely good utility knife as far as harmony supports go. But yeah, so the decision to release another follow-up attack is kind of weird. She's got a nice design though, in terms of like the way the character is designed and drawn and so on. She's a nice looking character, not necessarily to my aesthetic taste. Ling Sha's more to my aesthetic taste, but she's got a nice design. Like, overall, I think that she's got nice design up to the point where she's almost over designed, and Ling Shai feels a little bit on the under designed side of the same part of the spectrum, and that she could use a little bit more ostentatious sort of detailing. But yeah, at any rate, so yeah, that's where the banners are moving over the next couple cycles. But I've played through the main narrative because, well, I had to, basically. I had to knuckle down and devote all of my gaming time to that because, for some reason, everybody likes to spoil relentlessly. I
Yeah.
don't know why.
Yet another benefit to not using social media is when a new game comes out with story that I want to see, because I'm not on social media all the time, all I have to do is just not go to any of the dedicated areas on the internet for that particular type of content, and I'm golden.
Yeah, the thing is that if you actually want any kind of current events, literally the only place you can get current events now is Twitter. Like, it's not like you can watch CNN.
Well, I have a method that you aren't allowed to have.
Well, yeah, I can't go there. But I can go there. It's just that there are risks associated with it. But yeah, like, generally speaking, Twitter is where people go for news these days. Like, it's just the norm to get your news from Twitter, and it's going to be filtered in a million different ways. But at least you will get it, and you will get it in a timely fashion, and you will not get just the particular version which the CNN or the BBC wants to give you. New Zealand media at the moment, right now, has this like absolutely wall-bangingly retarded, full-blown version of Trump derangement syndrome. If you did not know that, if you did not know ahead of time that it was, the US election was restricted in theory to US citizens, you would think that we were voting on the US president in New Zealand.
I mean,
It's
I know
really
our
quite bizarre.
I know our presidential elections are a meme for how ridiculous they are, but man,
The Trump derangement syndrome is very real. I just don't comprehend why the media is so convinced that we care this much about the US election, but they are, and it's just the way of things, and there's not really much to be done about it.
yeah, and
Anyway,
as I was telling you before the show as well, uh, right now U.S. politics is in that point in the election cycle where I just can't bring myself to follow current events very hard because everything is ridiculous hyperbole at best or outright lies, and it takes way too much time and effort to parse what's true and what's not. And by now, if you're smart, you've already figured out where the lines are. It's not like they're very hard to find. And so I've just gone out of my way to avoid all current event news, period, from the last several days. And probably will for the next week and a half unless something really important that catches my eye happens.
yeah. Um. Anyway, so I played through the story. It's as always, it's frustrating how little story you get. And when I say little story, it's not really that little, considering this is just like, post major chapter patch content to tie you over, Trailblaze continuance. Um, it's sort of it's plenty of content for what you get, and it's all fully voice acted. It costs money to make these things, but yeah, it's always a bit frustrating when you get to the end of the patch and you're like, I want to know what happens next. Now I have to wait for weeks. But yeah, it's been fun so far. I haven't started any of the event content yet, but I have unlocked the imaginary element version of March 7th, who I really don't have any teams that she's useful for right now. She's a bit of a she's sort of a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none, in the sense that she's never going to be a primary DPSer. Her output is just not high enough for that, and she's also not enough of a buffer to be a harmony substitute. Like she's sort of sort of in this odd position of being like a hybrid character. So if you're going like hardcore exclusive free to play and don't have the opportunity to pull very many characters because you're not like playing every day and getting every jade and every event or whatever, I think that she'll be quite valuable to a lot of rosters. Um, she's got a lot of synergy with Harmony Trailblazer as well. You can build them to work as a 2-man break unit. Um, there are quite a few sort of approaches you could use to exploit that, or you could just use her as a sub DPS in a double DPS comp, um, because she basically pairs herself with another DPS and will give buffs to them, speed buffs to them, and gain stacks and extra attacks based on what the DPS that she's paired with does and what they are, what they, what type of unit they are. Gives her different buffs. There's like two different ones that you can get. One of them will make her a better damage dealer, and one of them will make her a better toughness breaker. So yeah, I think that she will be valuable for certain niche comps and for people who don't have any of the sort of the major meta comps. But she's not really strong enough along one axis. I don't think. I haven't thought of any builds in which she would be particularly strong at any rate, to justify a place in one of the main teams. Like, she can't stand in place of, say, Ryan May in a break team, for instance. She's just not strong enough for that. But if the meta swings back towards sort of double DPS or, hyper carry with a hybrid DPS or whatever, was it's been there before. It was like that earlier on, and so there were lots of like Blade Jingyu teams at one time. But that's not where the meta is right now. Most of the end game challenges wouldn't favour that type of strategy very strongly. I don't think so anyway. It's sort of hard to tell. Sometimes somebody will just hit upon a build that just works really well and nobody had thought of it before. So it could happen that way. But yeah, she's got her uses, and she's a fun character to use because she's just kind of silly compared to some of the more edgelordy characters. But yeah, the story is a combination of serious and lighthearted. Um, Lots of people have died so far, but they're all mooks so far. Yeah, it's basically another revisiting the Shansho Luofu story arc. So much like the previous Trailblaze continuances, the one in Aram Alley where you rebuild the shopping district, and then the one in the Fixed Troll Garden where you join the ghost hunting squad. And now this is the third time we've gone back for a major visit to the Luofu, where the sword dance ceremony is being held, which is sort of like the Olympic Games for swords masters in the Shansho. Um, the and March ends up learning swords mastery because one of the generals tells Yunli and what's his name, Yanqing, to learn to work together, and you're going to have to take an apprentice and then train her together. So yeah, those two they seem like oil and water, and they fight like cats and dogs. But I've heard that their alternates in one of the other continuities of the Hoyoverse are actually married.
Did
So
did they have to cancel the swimming event at this sword fighting contest because there was so much fecal matter in the water, or did they have their equivalent of a scrotum gate?
I don't think that has happened. The story jumps around to and fro a little bit in terms of where it exists in the timeline over the course of about 2 weeks. But as far as the current patch goes, the event actually hasn't started yet. It's in the preparatory phases, but all hell's breaking loose because there's heaps of tourists around, and lots of people are busy, and there's lots of activity. So people who are up to no good have a lot of cover to get up to no good. And basically all of the sort of like the remaining criminal elements that have been floating around since the main event told in the Shanshu Lofu plot arc, they've basically got their opportunity to come out and try and get some of their own back in various ways. And this patch basically introduces for the first time the Borisin as a major enemy. And the Borisin are sort of like they're the arch nemesis race for the Foxian race, in that the Foxians were a slave race to the Borisin once upon a time. Um, yeah, the Borisin are sort of like the main foot soldiers of the Abundance in the eternal war between the Hunt and the Abundance. So we're going to start the fight. Okay. So yeah, the story basically revolves around the chaos that's taking place as the sword dance is about to begin, and yeah, so there's a lot of talking, a lot of running around. You run into Scott again, and because it's Scott, the story won't make any sense if you haven't done the Aram Valley story, Aram Alley story. So
Say Aurum Vale for a second.
no, no, I would not want to relive that. Um, but yeah, so it's been a fun time. I always enjoy these stories. Like you, there is a non-negligible chance that I enjoyed it more because I was coming off of the back of Work Lamont.
Yeah,
There's not really any help for it, unfortunately. There's, oh, I'm still scarred by that. My goodness. But yeah, so having a good time there. Looking forward to the events. There are other silly events coming out this content cycle. I'm generally very impressed with the cadence that they've managed to uphold over the course of time. Um, I've been able to consistently get a lot of enjoyment out of Star Rail, and I've been able to consistently participate in a lot of the end game events, and with a reasonable amount of success. Like my success is going to tail off a bit as my characters sort of like rotate out of the meta in some sense, but to a greater or lesser extent, I've been able to do everything that I've wanted to do, and it's been at a level that is not too exhausting. Like, I don't actually have to spend all of my time playing the game to keep up with it at the top level, but there's plenty for me to do when I do want to play it. And I've still got a backlog of older content that I haven't done, like the Pokemon game, and there's a bunch of combat trials that I haven't done that are worth Stellar Jade in the Fixed Troll Garden as well from the ghost hunting event. Like, there's still plenty of things for me to do in there. So yeah, I'm pretty happy about the amount of content that they have been producing for that. On the downside, of course, that means that I haven't been able to do jack about the playing ZZZ, which I had really kind of wanted to do, but it's proving to be kind of troublesome to find an opportunity to do so because I basically just have too many gachas on the go. It
Yeah.
turns out that there's a limit. There's a limit to the amount of free time any given person has, and
Well,
I am at that limit.
I will probably talk about ZZZ shortly. Um, while the story is fun so far, and I do like what's there when I'll talk about it. Uh, deep is a thing it ain't. Filled with profound discussions about characters and how they no, everything is just big, loud, and in your face. There is no kind of deeper analysis to be had about the ZZZ story. It is
Well, I mean,
exactly what you get on the tin.
it seemed to me that it was sort of going for like a Western superhero comics vibe in some sense.
Yeah, I do get a bit of that vibe.
Whereas I view Star Rail as sort of like more classic JRPG.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, I'm having a good time with that. I wish there was more of it, as always, but you simply can't have an infinite amount of content. That's never going to be a thing that happens. We're sort of stuck as far as that's concerned. There's no helping it. Um, I don't know that I really did much else. I haven't had a chance to explore the actual, like, the event based around March 7th training. I I finished the summer event in Genshin Impact, which was fun. I enjoyed it. It was a bit silly at the end, but it was not like outrageously silly. It was just this normal Genshin level of silly. Um, and it tried very hard to be heartwarming and just was sort of a bit head tilting to me. But
Paper
yeah, it was.
frogs.
Paper frogs are okay. I like the paper frogs. They are a little bit uptight, but I mean, they know what they've got to do, and it's jump. But
Uh,
yeah, generally speaking, I thought that event was great. I haven't finished it yet. There's a bunch more chests and pickups in that for me to find. I like that they make it map out very easily. That once you've managed to find a certain amount of stuff with your lawn mowing, they will gradually reveal more and more. So you get to a certain point, where you get an item that you can use, which will reveal the location on the map of any chests and pickups within a certain radius of you, a fairly narrow radius, but a certain radius of you for a bit. And then you can use that to home in on where all the nearby ones are for you to get. But once you've got like most of them, like a sizable portion of them, like probably looks like about 80% or 90%, you get another item that just paints all of the locations on the map so that you can just find all of the things you've missed.
yeah, this is
Or at least what looks like all of the things you missed. I don't know if it's necessarily all the things you missed, but it seems to be.
this is people that play games that are all about collecting stuff in the world and exploring. It is considered good practice. You get to your 95% mark. To do something like this for people that just want to get the 100% mark, because the only other option those types of players have is to go look up a guide. And at that point, the immersion is completely broken anyway. Why are you trying to hide it?
Yeah, so I'm pretty close to the point of getting everything. There's a few things I haven't done and a few things I haven't gotten. And I've heard that there are a few secret chests as well, but I'm not that fussed about that. I want to get me a decent helping of Jade. I haven't seen any Natlan characters that I really like the look of, and I'm not really that fussed about the whole Pokemon style aesthetic of it. But people say that the new characters are going to power creep the crap out of the existing cast because the gimmick that they're getting is just too powerful at present as far as closed beta is concerned. I don't know the details because I'm not in closed beta and I don't look up spoilers and stuff, but that seems to be the vibe that's coming out there. So yeah, I might end up getting bullied into picking up a couple of newer characters or whatever, since I'm using a bit of a janky cast of characters right now. Like I've got a couple of new ones that are giving my team most of their power, and most of the power comes from Clorinda and Farina because they're both from the Fontaine chapter. Therefore, they're at a certain level of power. Um, Yaimiko has held up very well over the course of time, but my fourth slot, not so much, and my second team, not so much. Like my second team is based around Ningguang and Yunjin, and they're serviceable, but you can feel the power gap. The power gap is very tangible of being, a launch 4-star versus a modern 5-star. It's not even comparable. Um,
And
yeah.
then you
That
have your
said, the
Corinda
launch
team with
four
my
stars,
shuttlecock.
the launch 4-stars are also sort of like a tier of raw power above pretty much all the 4-stars that they've launched since then. Like that, all of the subsequent 4-stars are jank to use in one way or another. They can't sort of hit those levels of power that the first batch can.
You don't have your constant pyroapplicator, your Barbaras, officials.
Yeah, like I mean, Bennett, Shangling, Bishal, they all, and what's the boy in short pants? Can't remember his name.
Oh,
Uh,
Xi Jinping, Winnie the Pooh.
you always call him Xi Jinping. I remember that. I can't remember what his actual name is. But yeah, like they are all sort of like mainstays in a lot of teams, especially budget teams. But like none of the subsequent ones show up. Like nobody ever puts Carver in a team, for instance. It just doesn't happen.
Well, they did when he was bugged for that brief period of history where he could permanently
Doesn't
remove
count.
people stuff from the world.
That is a very powerful ability, but that is not an intended ability. And nobody puts like that weird rock and roll Liyue girl in.
Yeah. Uh,
Like there's a lot of those characters, they just don't appear.
nobody uses Gaming, like the
There
plunging
are
attack team.
there are people who use Garming because they just like using the plunging attack thing, but yeah, Garming is just the 4-star version of Cloud Retainer, essentially. Um, that was what he was released alongside her to be. He's like, oh well, this is the jumpy character for 4-star tier. Like he plays pretty much the same as the Xiao, in that you just bounce up and down everywhere. Um, but yeah, I think that they've got a bit of a weird power imbalance there. 4-stars, by contrast, in Star Rail so far have been holding up very well. There aren't very many of them, but generally speaking, their power has been drifting up at roughly the same pace that the 5-star ones are. So whichever 4-stars you get that are of a similar age to the 5-stars are going to be proportionally more powerful. Like Gallagher is just way more powerful and well-rounded as a healer than Natasha is. Like Natasha's just terrible by comparison. Even though Natasha does have her advantages, because if what you want is just a big chunk of health and you want it now, Natasha's your girl. But Gallagher's more effective in practical teams. And Lynx was more effective than Natasha when Lynx came out. And we've also got Moza coming out soon. And Moza is lightning hunt follow-up attack style. And apparently is actually extremely good as sort of like a follow-up attack pseudo support type character. The numbers that he's got in closed beta apparently allow him to serve quite well as a buffer as well as a damage dealer. So yeah, it seems like their 4-stars are sort of tracking quite well with their 5-star power level, unlike in Genshin where nobody cares about the 4-stars because they invariably come out bad.
Well,
The
Frimine there, the most useful 4-star, that he does
I mean,
literally nothing.
you can use them if you are really bad at Genshin. and all you want is the most brain dead character you possibly can have to just use to hit things with a sword, well, Fremine can do the job for you. But like nobody's going to build a team around what's her name, the cat girl, Lynette, because she just doesn't have a way of really holding a team together or doing a lot of damage or supporting a team strongly. Like that's not to say like I'm neither in the camp of people who say there are no useless characters in Genshin, they all have their role, and nor am I in the camp of saying that every 4-star is useless and you can't use them. But there are just a lot of characters that are not very good. The ones that really stand the test of time that have come out recently are ones like Chevreuse, where you are actually enabling a new type of team.
Ones that
Like, Chevreuse is the electro fire version of what's her name, Nailu, and that you place certain restrictions on what you can do in your team, and in exchange for doing so, you get buffs to allow you to play, like, you can play straight Overload because you like straight Overload using Chevreuse as an enabler. The same way that Nailu allows you to play straight Bloom, where just playing a Bloom team doesn't work in any other context unless you've got Nailu
yeah.
to justify it. So it allows you, as an enabler, it allows you to play an Overload team. And so a 4-star like that has room to exist. But just the Fremine doesn't. Lynette doesn't. As characters, they need to have better kits to be interesting and useful. Like Fremine, you use a skill and then you hit the enemy, I guess. Like, is there anything else you can do with him?
I don't know. I used him in that trial thing, and he was incredibly simple, and he does physical damage.
Yeah, for some reason his damage goes from cryo to physical when he hits the peak of his power, just to ensure that you don't get any bonuses and he can't be useful. Like, yeah, they just do weird things a lot of the time.
If a character
And
doesn't do something to empower a reaction or use that reaction differently or constantly apply an elemental status as a 4-star right now, they
yeah, so I mean, look at Toma. How
all
many
right,
people use Toma?
all right. I forget he exists.
Like, and I can see a use case for him. I really can. As somebody who doesn't really have any good pyro off-field pyro applicators, I can totally see what Toma is supposed to do, but he doesn't do it. He's bad instead.
But you have Boba, the Tanuki thing. But,
Guoba.
yeah, Guoba. So that's all
Yeah.
the off-field pyro you'll ever need.
Well, that's the thing. Then you have to be a Shangling player. And do you really want to do that? Do you really want to become one of the infinite number of Shangling players?
Oh, but I also don't want to be a Toma player because he's Toma.
Like, what's her name is coming out? Uh, Emily's Emily, the new the perfumer character is coming out, and Yanfei's on her banner as well, which makes me infinitely tempted to pull for her because I want Yanfei. But Yanfei's also not good. Yanfei's just I like the character, that's why I want to pull for her. She's an on-field pyro catalyst user, so it would be like building Ningguang again, basically. But like there are plenty of Ningguang mains, but there are no freaking Toma mains because new 4-stars are bad. I'm sure that there's like one sad little Toma main out there, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know why they're so interested in making things shite, but yeah, maybe they'll reimagine it when they move into Natlan if everything is using this new OP mechanic. I don't know. I don't know how it works. I haven't looked at it. And honestly, I don't think that this is the right development direction in the abstract for them, where every time a new zone comes out, they just create a new character gimmick and then slap it on everything. I
Yeah,
don't really like it. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I think that there's heaps of work that you should be doing in the back catalog to make all of the older characters that are missing some value more valuable. I think that's more the way to go.
yeah, and I don't know how much. Well, I can totally believe Hoyo uh is doing what they're saying. Um, you got to also remember the people reporting this stuff are the Genshin community. Remember Klee.
Yeah, Clee. Well, the thing is that Clee is powerful. It's just that she doesn't have a context to be powerful in. Like
Yeah,
her numbers are still good. Her numbers were never not good.
yeah, but this could be a
She's
case of
hard to
that, right?
use.
In the beta on a target dummy, you can put out crazy numbers, but you get an actual gameplay, and it
Well,
it's tricky to use.
this is a bit of a different case because it's an entire cast of characters who are all going to have the mechanic, not just one character being lit up.
I see.
Because every and this is like Numa and Usia, like every character is going to play into it to some extent. It's like, you know, Bond of Life or something like that, where they're just going to start slathering it onto everything.
I didn't mind the Fontaine characters having Numa and Usia because all it effectively let you do was shortcut a few puzzles.
It does do damage,
Yeah, it does, but you can't make a build out of it, and it's not that much of a damage augment. Barely
no.
noticeable.
But Bond of Life is certainly did parasitize all those characters. Like it just kept appearing over and over again and doing weird crap.
Yeah, right after Navia, when they started working towards Arlecchino, they really fell in love with that mechanic.
But yeah, I mean, I use it on Clorinda all the time, but it just feels bizarre and counterintuitive a lot of the time. It's like, oh, I'm taking a healing penalty, which just makes it harder to work with other characters that heal because they're chunking my damage for some reason.
Yeah,
I don't know. It just seems like they're more in love with the idea of using a gimmick than actually thinking out the way the whole game fits together.
yeah.
But I guess we'll wait and see what they do for Netland. Yeah. So I'm playing on a really slow burn in Genshin right now, where my main focus is Star Rail and my non-focus is FF because I'm still upset. I did do the raids with Ari last week. I have not done them this week. I don't know when I'll have time. I don't really want to do them by myself either. it's just that I'm having difficulty mentally with Final Fantasy right now because I'm so upset about it. But yeah, I'll have to
In
see. I'll have to see what I do.
and I don't really want to jump into the raids right now. If we do want to get into them, I'd like to save them for the end of the weeks. So we don't get stuck on a 3-year tangent and and push back ZZZ and Trails again because I will start forgetting stuff if we skip too many weeks. But there there are some things to say about them mechanically, at least.
The I have not played any ZZZ. I have been diligently logging in every day to scratch my scratchy because that's the only thing I unlocked as far
Yeah,
as daily quests are concerned.
it takes the prologue in the first chapter are quite long, and the you don't get the ability to dump battery until good ways into chapter one.
Yeah, so I guess I'm incrementally acquiring very small amounts of dosh. That's about it.
As soon as you ascend once, all that dosh is going to disappear before you even finish one character.
It's still dosh that I didn't have before that I. When you were bleeding for Mora, you wouldn't have turned up your nose at it.
No, but I'm already at level 30 doing the equivalent of popping the gold ley line in ZZZ.
The goal. Oh dear. Yeah, I mean, I would very much like to play it, but it's purely a function of time. Like, there's only so much room in the day, and Star Rail is my focus, and Star Rail is quite time friendly. Like, it takes a long time to work out what works and what doesn't in any given week, but once you do, you can usually track along through it relatively quickly. Genshin, his quality of life improvements have made it less time consuming when it's not your focus. Like once it becomes my focus again, if it becomes my focus again, it will take a lot of time. So I'm glad that it's not taking too much time right now. I am very tempted to build up Kirara though because her her exploration skill thing,
Oh,
her
the
using her
Amazon
skill to
box.
explore the Amazon box, I think is hilarious, and I don't know why I find it so funny. But she's not very good, but she can turn herself into an Amazon box for some reason.
Yeah,
But yeah, yeah. So, and I do. There is a facet of me that wants to play Final Fantasy. The problem is that every time I do, I'm reminded of why I stopped. and and I don't mean in terms of like stopping playing it as a whole game, but in terms of why I stopped wanting to log on every day, and that's because it is bad now. The story has made it a game that is bad now in my mind. And until I receive some kind of hopium that it's not always going to be like this, I don't know if I can find my motivation to play it with the same sort of intensity ever again.
Yeah, I by this point in the expansion, I would have been throwing a lot of time into being sure I got on did roulettes and have multiple hundreds. As you can see, the same three 100s, the two that I leveled plus Astro and roulettes, are the same ones I still have. Oh, there's the train. Yeah. So
Yeah, that's more or less all I got for my week. Uh, I'm in a state of I don't have time to play things that I do want to play, and there are things that I want to play and don't want to play at the same time. In the case of Final Fantasy, because I mean, I like there are some dungeons I'd like to play again. There are characters I want to try out, like jobs I want to try out. That I don't dislike the process of grinding characters up in any particular way. In fact, I find it quite relaxing to do, but it's just that when I log in, it's like, remember, you just spent like 20 hours with Luke Lamar or whatever. I'm
hmm
just like, oh, why'd you remind me? Why you do this to me, brain?
so the reason I was pushing to move the Final Fantasies because I want to jump from Star Rail. Finally giving intro thoughts on ZZZ. So if you don't have anything else, and that's a good springboard point, we can move on to that. People,
Yep, no, I'm done. I'm done.
all right. For weeks now, I've been saying I'm going to get to it and finally talk about it, but we kept going on Final Fantasy
You
tangents.
mean if you finally get an opportunity to brag about your gacha luck on the podcast?
Well, that didn't happen until this week. It was really good luck before this week, but it got insane this week. So yeah, I've got both the limited characters with relatively few pulls, plus my free pull, my free 5-star, not free, but free. You don't have to spend any. From the normal banner was Grace, and then the maid girl with the dolls, and came along for the ride. And the gotcha decided to get a little too enthusiastic and threw the furry at me.
Are still officially now at Furfag.
No, he did not get the when I ranked up. He's staying at level 20. That I only got him to steal the free the free pull you get for getting a character to 20. So he will remain there because he is an icky boy and a furry. And robo legs are all right. That's something I could work with, but not on a furry wolf man. So yeah. That aside, that guy has the sheep mount I'm saving up for.
You jelly.
Yep, I'm getting there. 12 more million to go. But so ZZZ. Most of the pulls are not relevant to talking about the story and what I played so far, because basically they are only used in this game's version of Simulated Universe that I've unlocked, and in your daily commission style, not commission style. What do you? Your domain style grinding. So I actually have not got to really take my characters that I've gotten and take them through their paces and figure them out. I've done a good bit because I had to do quite a bit of those to dump my stamina for the day and do as much simulated universe as I had the time for. But yeah, I'm still level 30, so there also what I'm doing is not going to be scaled for in game, so I'm still not getting I'm not deep enough into the world level equivalents essentially to really get a good feel for how deep their utility can go. So their true value will become more apparent later as I make progress in the game, I'm sure, and which ones work and which ones don't, and what combos work and don't will become more apparent there because uh, starting off with the gameplay of this game. Uh, I am much more of the belief in ZZZ that any character roster can work as long as you're not hitting the time limit, and time limits don't appear to be that big of an issue for getting maximum rewards at the end. In fact, they hardly seem to be an issue at all. Especially if you're playing on controller, you should have plenty of time to hit the buttons fast enough to do damage. But because there's so many tools in the kit for this being an action game relative to Genshin, it's not a Devil May Cry here. You know, we're not talking crazy levels of mechanics going on. But characters have things like pause combos. They have press hold inputs on certain attacks, and characters have various other tools. The biggest ones that you'll need to learn to get used to are the dodge counter, where you perfect dodge, although the window is incredibly lenient. We're talking like 15 to 20 frames here. And the character swap counter, where if you're being when you see the yellow flash, if you press the swap button, you can call in a character. They'll intercept the attack, and then you can either not push a button and let time stay slowed for a hair, like you're in Witch Time, or you can press a counter button and get or press the attack button and get a special tag in counter attack that
I can't resist. I can't even resist.
well, oftentimes, most of the time, that's the correct thing to do.
But also, I felt like that the actual frame window on that was way more restrictive than the perfect dodge one.
Yeah, the perfect dodge counter is a little bit tighter, but it's still huge. At least in the context of action games. For mobile games, for people that aren't used to action games, the window is probably going to take some getting used to. But because it's an action game, despite this insane luck I've had on the gacha, this essentially just gives me more play styles to play with. It's not going to be, if they maintain a level of difficulty where they just don't let the numbers get super out of hand, that's all it's going to do. Since they're leaning heavily into the action game mechanics that they've got going on here.
No, numbers will override eventually.
Eventually.
It won't. I don't think it's going to take very long for that to be the case.
But
like, the reality is people are going to be posting their times, and you're going to need a full team of 5 stars to get those times, or the five stars plus the 1 broken 4-star that every Hoyoverse game has.
Yeah, but right now you should be able to S rank with 4 stars on anything, given the time that golly, the train just coming and going, scaling all them zones.
Here. This makes me depressed. Let's go somewhere else.
Where
shall we go?
Go to the guild house for now, since I can't 2 things at once. But its nature as an action game, instead of with more mechanics and tools for each character, allows for a bit more flexibility on the user endpoint, where just by getting good with a character, you can override some of that inherent number difference that Genshin falls victim to, I think. But it will depend just how bad they get into the number sync as time goes on. But for now, it's fine because we're still in the early game, and there just aren't that many characters, so you should not run into too many issues. I like the gameplay. It's about what I expected from Hoyo's attempted at an action game. It's got to be a mobile game, so we're not going to get Royal Guard here, and it always has to be online.
Can you imagine trying to Royal Guard by tapping on a phone, though?
That would be awful. But given what we got, it executes fairly fluidly in gameplay and feels pretty good. The dodge counters when you land them feel good, and the assist counters feel good. Finishing the pause combos on what's the green girl with the electric sun baton? Starts with an A. And Abby?
Ambi?
Ambi, that's it. And it's not Abby. Yeah, doing her pause combos correctly to get the bonus damage and the faster come out is always fun. And figuring out how each character's unique mechanics work and how to utilize their different tools and subtleties that are kits is very well put together, I think, for a base ground level of a game. And there's a lot they can build off with here, and they've already demonstrated they've got a lot of ideas, at least initially. We'll see where they take it, if they continue to build on these core mechanics like this, or if they have to start leaning into gimmicks like they did in Genshin. But for now, it's in a good spot. I have nothing but praise to say for the gameplay as far as what I expected from a game and being an action game. There's enough here where you can make up a good bit of the number difference with just raw practice and skill at playing the character, but it's not so deep that it's completely impenetrable and going to be impossible for people who have never played an action game. There's also an easy mode if
Sensor,
you say what?
Sensor Tower says people like it.
Yeah, people do like it.
Dat Hoyo versus Boycott, yo.
Yeah, not going so hot.
Like, Hoyo literally increased their overall revenues by 10% overnight.
Yeah,
That's where your boycott got you.
Yeah. So do I have over about yeah, you'll see ZZZ's up there, topped on its release month. Not unexpected, but there was a boycott supposedly going on. You got some
You've
Otome
gone
game, I
super
think.
robot as far as my end is concerned. I can't hear you.
Well, for the recording, nothing will be bad, but
I still can't
I believe it's just.
for all I can tell, I'm disconnected.
Okay, I changed the Discord channel server to the West Coast instead of in
Well,
Sydney, so that should
I've
fit.
got a 206.
Yeah, because my ping was fine on everything else, it was just Discord. So I just reset a recording channel to be. Okay, so you can see ZZZ. It's a Hoyoverse launch month. Of course, it did well. But yeah, blue. It did
That's
real.
still a large number.
Yeah, that's 1/10 of $1 billion. Then you got
now total up all their titles. Like I don't know if Tears of Temis is on there, but title up like Honkai Third plus Genshin plus Star Rail plus ZZZ. That's a lot of moolah
yeah, that's 150 mil.
in a month.
Yeah, and then you got some Otome game breaking them up there, but I mean, I guess the girls got to spend money on something too. So
Yeah, I guess I don't really understand. I suppose this is like the degradation of society in a nutshell, right? You've got all the guys are spending money on waifu gachas, and all the girls are spending money on husbando gachas,
yeah,
instead of like actually building families, because
it,
we're all completely ruined human beings.
it is the total death of the dating scene and the family building experience. But anyway, yeah, it's going really well. Put that back. Mic when I was make sure I didn't mute the mic when I was doing sound shenanigans. Okay, we're good. So yeah, gameplay wise, I agree. I think ZZZ deserves most of the praise it gets for finding a happy balance between casual play and having enough depth there that you can express some skill with any character you pick.
I think that with these things, it's not so much about, oh well, I like this individual mechanic influence that executes well. I think it's sort of like a much more vague feeling about how combat as a whole flows.
Yeah, there's a part of
And
that.
I feel like it's got a good sense of continuity. Like you you don't. I often, when I'm playing Genshin, I feel very I feel very harshly the gaps between character swaps. That feels very stiff.
I think a lot of this has to do with the sound effects each game uses, mostly. Because ZZZ, your combat experience is greatly enhanced by sound, because they don't have the Devil May Cry mechanic where an enemy will prioritize getting itself on screen before attacking. Instead, you have to listen for an audio cue, and the audio cue is the same anytime an enemy attacks. And when you swap, it's not the Genshin whip that happens. A character says a voice line and sprints in while the other character is still on screen and has to get out.
Don't tell me you've never rammed that button in Genshin and been able to swear up and down the character should have come out, but it just didn't.
Yeah, I know.
It's like that destroys your sense of the way combat is operating. You get pulled out immediately because you tried to do a thing and for some reason it just didn't take. There's no visual feedback, there's no audio feedback, it just doesn't take.
Yeah, in ZZZ, they straight up tell you in one of the tutorials later that a character animation, if it's in the middle of it, is going to continue and keep playing, even if you swap out, but you will take control of the new character immediately. And your character will swap out as soon as they're able to. But they will still take any damage they would have when they get bopped while you're swapping. And that's for a non-assist swap, obviously, where you come in and do the assist counter. But yeah, it feels good to play. It's as with all action games, describing it to people that do not play action games or that have not played this one in particular is very difficult because, like Paul said, there's a kind of a overarching, hard to define feeling when it comes to these games. How everything just kind of clicks together as a cohesive unit, and you just got to kind of play it to see if it's your jam or not. And I think the ZZZ is something that's perfectly playable by most skill levels, given what I've seen, with an easy mode there if you really just aren't competent at all. Although I think the
I I don't see any reason why you would pick the easy mode. Like you would have to be incredibly disabled, or
yeah
maybe perhaps even literally disabled. Like if you just want to enjoy the story and you have some impairment that prevents you from doing the combat properly, then maybe. But the regular combat is not within a country mile of being difficult enough to justify picking an easier skill level.
no, no, it's not. The best you'll be doing is competing for times until maybe there's something in game that requires a modicum skill to clear. Like you have to actually
I've
know to
heard
push buttons.
that I've heard that at the higher difficulty levels, Wuthering Waves gets incredibly vicious. But I've never heard anybody say any such thing about ZZZ. Their target audience is different.
Yeah. And even then, going for scores and times in action games is still perfectly valid as a way to present challenge to the player, uh, and just setting the bar for success at peaking out at moderate. So I don't have a problem with action games doing that. It's just a different way of measuring your skill, as far as I'm concerned. I do prefer the latter method, where the in game is just harder. I think it feels better, but I can take a scoring method, time method, trying to beat your best scores. That's perfectly fine to me. Um, so yeah, that's the gameplay. As far as the general gameplay goes, specific characters, they have already demonstrated some of the things they can do. So the reason I brought up dodge counters and assist counters before is because a lot of characters start the fight either with only a bit of their mechanic turned on or their mechanic completely turned off, as is the case with the two main 5 stars I've been using as my primary attackers, Ellen Joe and the I forget her name, the Chinese fuzz lady, member of the police. Uh, so
I can't remember her name either because all I ever see of her is people posting pictures of her butt on Twitter.
it's very prominent in gameplay.
Like she is definitely the Mona of this game.
Yeah, she got them skin tight, you know, uh, latex maybe jeans that somehow have pockets on them, and they only further emphasize the booty. So yeah, like when she comes into the field, she starts with four charges of her charged attack. If you press and hold the attack button, you'll do a charged blast in a cone in front of you, shotgun blast, and you can tilt the stick to have her roll and do the blast, but it'll do a little less damage. And you want to do it as close to the enemy as you can because it does a lot more damage, but it also puts you in more danger, obviously. Um, the thing is, to get charges of that back, your only option is to use the EX version of her skill button or to do a dodge counter or to have her tag in as an assist. If she's off field and you tag her in with an assist counter, she gets, I think, 2 or 3 pips. If she does a dodge counter while she's active on the field, she gets 1 pip back. And if she hits her EX active skill, she gets 4 back. You can get 2 pips if you complete her full combo, but at the rate enemies attack in that game, unless you're just okay with taking shots all the time, that's not going to happen that often. You're going to have to dodge or assist counter something, unless your positioning is just really good. And maybe there's a particular style of play that facilitates that I just haven't found yet. But utilizing the assist and dodge counter for her is necessary to keep her mechanic going. And then and that's fine. I like
I
that
mean,
playstyle a
I
lot.
found it. I found in the tutorial that you can basically use Billy to adjust positioning all the time without having to break your damage dealing because he is so comically mobile without ever having to stop attacking.
Yeah, a bunch of characters are, and she is too. She can go into her charge shot stance and do that dash move, the dash shot without charges. It just won't do ether damage and it'll tickle, but it still gives her the full mobility of that stance that she goes into when she's doing her charge blasts. So she can do it too. It's just you will not be progressing your normal combo when you're doing that because you have to take her personal combo all the way to the end of its chain and her combo is very long. Her basic light attack combo. So, and if she leaves the field at any time, the combo resets. So there's her, and then you've got the other 5-star I put a lot of time into, which is Ellen Joe, the first 5-star I pulled. Got her in literally my first 10 pull on the limited banner. Her mechanic when she comes into the field is completely turned off. You don't even start with a Grace half charge. You have 0 charge. And the only way to get charges are it's either assist or dodge counter. It gives you 1. And she can hold 6. Or holding down the dash button to enter a super fast running state, and then positioning yourself near an enemy and doing the charged dashing attack, where she will stop on a dime when you press the button and build up power in her little halberd thing, and coat it in ice.
Isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what it is. And she'll do her charge slash, and it'll coat the enemy with ice, and they get a bit of frost build up, and you get 3 stacks. And for every stack you have, you can do a special version of her basic attack combo, and her EX skill gives her 1 charge for every time you chain it. So yeah, there's a lot of differences in the way those two characters play, and that's just using the core mechanics. With Ellen Joe's special dash being the only unique closest thing to a gimmick we got between the two. And then you've got the other 5 stars. The support I got, the maid with the dolls. She can summon lightning from off field. Basically, she's the closest thing you got to a perma off fielder support. That she's fully offensive, and you can pull her in and progress her normal combo enough. If you don't have enough meter, get her EX thing off. That's just a big thunderstorm of lightning that'll keep going forever, and you can swap her off field and it'll keep going. Or you can progress her combo and get a lesser version of that to keep an enemy locked down or building up electro charge on them, and then swap out, and that'll keep going for a little bit and keep doing damage while you pull in another character. So she's a lot about maximizing her dolls for what you need at the particular moment and applying a whole lot of electro status all over the. And then you've got the other character that I've used a lot is Grace. And Grace comes into the field with no charge. And Grace at first seems terrible, until you realize just how much stunk and damage her stupid EX skill does. And it's all about building up grenade charges and applying the electrified status with her, because she's an anomaly character. So all of her damage investment is in building up that electrified status. And you do this by doing a few basic attacks to make her grenades light up, and when all of them light up, if you press the skill button, even if it's not charged, you do electric damage. You press it when you have full grenades and it's lit up for the EX version, you do a colossal amount of damage. So all the characters play very differently that I have right now and can be mixed and matched into fun and interesting. What else was I going to say about these characters? I was going somewhere with all that too. I totally lost the end of the train. We were almost at the end. But yeah, I like how they've implemented the characters so far and focused this core set of 5 stars on the base mechanics of the game, and just really getting you very familiar with them, and how they don't the things like the dolls being able to lock stuff down does make it clear why this character is the offensive support character that's S tier right now. The doll girl, but and stuff like Ellen Joe's unique dash and the police girl's ability, just ridiculous mobility and high damage within her shotgun stance. Make it clear how these characters could be perceived as being super high tier, and probably are. I don't know. I haven't personally touched the other characters very much outside of story mode, where I use the trial versions. So I don't have a whole lot of reference, but it's the Hoyoverse community at the launch of a Hoyoverse game. I don't know if they're just overlooking stuff because they seem to do that a lot. And I genuinely think there's potential for the other characters to have a lot to go on. Everybody says the wolf guy is super good. He's easily the best stun character in the game. just looking at his kit. Is not even a contest, although there aren't many to choose from, to be fair. And he might be the best in the game because Frost is a
But
really
he could
powerful
also,
debuff.
be Diluc, where
Yeah,
everybody is like freaking out about him until they're not.
yeah. He could be a Diluc.
Like he will give you a walkover for the first like until 2.0 sort of thing, and then the luster will start to wear off.
Yeah, and then he doesn't make it much further past that. So I have him. I could level him up, but I'm not going to.
Because you're
Laz,
not a fairy.
yeah, I don't like that he's a Nicky boy. That was already a lot of points out of Diluc's favor, and I don't like that he's a furry. I also was not nearly as lucky on my gotcha pull for Genshin at the start, so I was stuck with Diluc and Diluc adjacent stuff as my only 5-star options.
Well, you say that, but what that means essentially is that you never had the 4-star experience. So I played exclusively 4 stars up until Fontaine, basically. And it's a very different experience, and I'm wondering how that will map onto ZZZ.
Yeah,
Because I had to be better functionally. I had to be better than everybody else because I never pulled a 5-star. I just didn't have anything in the toolkit.
yeah,
It didn't
Mona.
happen for me. Well, I had Mona and Klee. Well, I had Mona, and Klee.
Yeah, Mona. She got that decoy.
She does have that decoy. This is not going to change my experience very much because eventually you have to deal damage in order to kill an opponent.
No, you just gotta distract it, and they'll get bored with the decoy, and then come eat your face. That's how you win, right?
What I am concerned about is, did they learn the lessons? Now, Hoyo has, as much as Hoyo has shown a complete and utter incapacity to fix past mistakes, they do seem to learn going forward. So I'm hoping that it won't be the case. But what my experience was that I had to develop a chronic case of Stockholm Syndrome for Ningguang because she was all I had going forward. The only solution to any of my problems was to just keep building her. And once she was, maxed out in C6, she was as good as a half pie built 1.05 star, which is at C0. Like that was what I had to do. That was the extent I had to go just to progress, just to keep moving forward.
So, I think with ZZZ, you'll be a bit more in luck for two reasons. Number one, anything that is not an interlude between main story chapters, because they do have those that are still technically story chapters where you're hanging out with Bell and Weiss, and you use your own characters for those. But for the actual big chapter stories, and I've been doing this every single time I go into story mode. So they have trial characters that are scaled appropriately for that level of the story and are slightly weaker than you could have if you brought your own.
The Star Rail does this, and it's actually a bad thing in most implementations. Because Star Rail is not built around player skill, it is based around team building. And what they do is that they just randomly will replace the character in your number 1 slot with the story appropriate character.
Oh,
So what keeps happening is that my tank keeps getting replaced by like random story person A,
then
and
you get
things go
munched up.
horribly. Usually they make those battles a lot easier than the battles which you would take your pre-built team to, but I still tend to get an absolute beating as a result.
Yeah. So we don't know yet, really, with CCZ. It's still very early in its life cycle. I am not, and I'm not very high on my Internet rank. I barely hit level 30.
If you look at what they did with characters like Xiao and that in Genshin, like they basically used Diluc as the baseline of power for 1.0 when they moved to 2.0.
Mhm.
So everybody in terms of output, if you're talking like DPS output, got scaled as though they were Diluc. They got power scaled out, which is why I had to struggle so much on my way up through the game. Like I got there in the end, and I built the crap out of Ningguang, and so now I can still use her at max adventure. It's sort of like max world level content. It's not a problem. I can do it. She's way less efficient than simply obliterating everything in sight using Clorinda, but she does the job when I come up against electroimmune things and so on and so forth. It still functions. However, the road getting there was arduous in the extreme. Like domain farming was just a brutal experience. I basically after a while I stopped doing it except when Ari was on to help me because it was just too difficult.
Yeah.
The they've actually gone back and simplified a lot of those domains now. Like all of those domains that like they just dumped all of your energy every 5 seconds or dumped all your stamina when you used a stamina consuming ability. All those domains are gone now. They don't exist anymore.
Not
Um,
really.
yeah, because basically it was proving to be an obstacle to people getting into the game because they would start their first domain farming and then stop playing
Yeah.
because
I
those early domains are just brutal. They
yeah.
only didn't cause a problem initially because of the sort of the furore surrounding a new game, but once it was no longer a new thing, people couldn't hack it anymore.
Yeah. So
But yeah, so the sheer brutality of that process, that's my concern. Is like, for instance, if let's say I become really attached to a crappy launch 4-star character, like I think Nicole's a really fun character. I enjoy seeing her on screen and doing things, and I think her combat style where you sort of like lay down mines in a weird kind of way, or basically she likes to use the the sage phlegma all the time. Um, but like I think that it's fun and silly and I like it. But
for
in a
nails.
game which was tr- yeah, the nails are funny as well. But the in a game that's all about player skill, there would not really be any obstacle preventing you from just maining her. But in a Hoyo game, are her numbers just going to get scaled out of oblivion by 1.3 to the point where she's actually unusable? Because that was what Genshin would do with a character like that.
Yeah, and this is the worry going into it, and I think an inevitability. But for now, well, for what we've got, you can play pretty much. Not if you're worried about your 10-year plan for ZZZ in your future,
I think you take gachas too seriously then.
yeah. But so I would focus on just the immediate and right now as the new hotness. If you pick it up and play it, you're gonna have a good time with whatever you pick. Later on, you're gonna run into power creep shoes like all gachas run into, but that time is not now. Oh, that's what I was trying to get into. I forgot the fourth party member you can take with you because you're allowed a 4 slot.
Bangbu?
Bang boo.
People love the Bangbus. Like, I was surprised how popular they ended up becoming.
I think it's their dumb little language that tips it over for a lot of people. So you can after a significant past the point you unlock the normal gotchas. On your way to chapter 2, you unlock the Bang Boo gotcha, and you cannot spend money that I can see anywhere in the UI to acquire more pools on the Bang Boo gotcha. And you do not have a rotating banner of Bang Boos. You just pick which one you want to be the rate up Bang Boo. And you pick the Bang Boo. You can. I did a bit of digging online, and I wanted the one that gives me more energy regen because it's a very general, all-purpose one. After I got that one, my initial batch of Bang Boo stuff, because they gave you a lot for this first month as free Bang Boo tickets as part of an event. I switched to the electrical one because I have a whole lot of electrical. I have 2 electric characters that are fairly consistently on the team, regardless of who the. And so the only way to acquire these Bang Boo tokens is through events or in-game static rewards, or simulated universe. That's the only way to get Bang Boo tokens. But they dump a lot of them on you early in the game, and they dumped a ton extra ones on us for the just logging in during the launch month. So you'll have about, by the time you unlock it, probably about 60-ish Bang Boo pulls. So I did eventually get it. I had to pull the spark on the first Bang Boo. But I got my Butler Bang Boo. And this Bang Boo doesn't have an offensive option. He doesn't do anything on the field aside from just whip out a table and start making making tea for everybody.
Frankly, I find myself getting distracted just watching them sort of like flail around the battlefield for no reason.
Yeah,
I find it very entertaining.
the one that hops on the minigun is always funny to me. Its little animations using that minigun are hilarious. But the one I
You know,
got
by
just
by the way,
very
speaking of
gentlemanly
things,
makes a tea. What's that?
speaking of things gotten for logging on, Star Rail is currently in its patch launch uh, phase, which means that if you just log on for 7 days, you'll get 10 pulls. So don't
Ah, cool.
forget to log on.
Ah, okay. So yeah. Um, and yeah, you can pull on the Bang Boo Gotcha. You can't spend money on it, and the Bang Boos are uh, don't appear to be factored into the balance because of this. They're just take whichever one will synergize best with your team for a bit of extra damage or utility and whatever you need. Another one after I get the electricity. Yeah, that's the Healy one for just late game insurance, and because you can
How to
pick
dodge them.
yeah. Well, while you're still learning, it's for learning late game insurance for because I don't know how hard it's going to be. I haven't got there yet. So I imagine it's not going to be a ball
Well,
bustingly
I also
difficult, but
I imagine that there's probably going to be some kind of health sapping ability on some character in the future.
yeah,
They take damage into account sometimes on scoring, so they'll have to work around that. But they fairly reliably use that in Hoyoverse games.
yeah. So just having a Healy option somewhere is seems good. Plus, in Simulated Universe, your health does not regen unless you find a regen tile. So taking it in there would probably be a real good idea.
I'm super undecided how I feel about that whole navigation system.
Oh, the TV stuff.
Yeah,
Uh, it in the story mode, I can take it or leave it. It's not offensive to me, but it's not particularly riveting either. It's not hard to find all three of the tokens you need to three-star the level. But it really works better for the simulated universe,
well, I mean,
where
it feels like it's designed for that type of play.
yeah, it feels like it's designed for it so much that I wonder if simulated universe as a concept didn't start originally as something like this TV idea. They were first cooking it up for Star Rail.
Could be. I mean, Simulated Universe has been through 4 full versions now in Star Rail. The current version is incredibly well developed, um, but also keeps forcing me to pick AHA, which I resent.
Yeah, but yeah, and that's about as far as I've gotten gameplay wise in ZZZ. I like it so far. Gameplay. Uh,
I want to play it so badly, but I've got this many hours in the day. I've got this much lifespan. Like, I don't know how I'm going to play it. I'm going to have to take a vacation just to get caught up on ZZZ. And it's like these games are really good at inflicting FOMO debuffs. Like
yeah,
a 1.1 is about to come out, and I haven't even touched the game yet. Basically, I've missed all of the launch events, which is where everybody gets their good start from because I haven't been playing.
yeah.
It's very frustrating to me.
I
And it's
managed.
like, oh well, I mean, if I wasn't playing during launch, maybe I should have just not bother at all. But uh,
Yeah, playing on the tail end of launch week. Well, if you were logging in to do your scratch tickets, you picked up a little.
yeah, I got scratch tickets, and I got like a week of Bamboo pulls or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
That's all that I remember getting.
You should have. I think you got some Prima gems for it too.
Maybe I don't know.
But yeah. So that's the gameplay side. Story side,
The main thing that I don't like about it is the UIs. I think that the UIs are very like every time I'm confronted with a UI from ZZZ, I feel like I'm being drowned in words. Like
yeah,
it seems to be very wordy compared to like everything in Star Rail is pretty much icons and quite explanatory icons. Like they've got the right level of detail. They're not over designed and not under designed. I feel like when ZZZ goes the icon route, they are so stylized to the point you can't tell what they're supposed to be. And when they go the word route, it's like, oh my goodness, my screen is filled with words. The colors are all bright and contrasting, and I don't know what anything is. Like
yep.
the first time I opened the what do they call the internet thing?
Oh,
The
that
the
thing. Yeah,
when first time I opened that, I thought my eyes were going to explode.
Yeah, thankfully the most egregious offender on that particular widget is the chat room app, and you only need to click on after you've checked all the things and made them all gray. You only need to check it occasionally, and the story prompts you to do it, and you can just leave that thing alone. You'll only need to open it to go to the other pages and track tasks. The piece of the UI that drives me
Also,
nuts,
I
though,
feel like generally speaking, like a lot of their menus are a little bit on the over stylized side. Like
yeah, the agents page is
I
what I was
can
going to get at.
tell on Genshin or Star Rail at a glance what I'm looking at when I look at like the skills menu or whatever. Like what level are my skills and how do I click on them to level them up or whatever. Like the menus in ZZZ are ridiculously stylized, and I can't even tell what I'm looking at half the time.
I
It just strikes me as being very some sort of weird uh some sort of weird chasm between being over designed and under designed to the point where I don't know what I'm looking at a lot of the time, and I'm sure you
it's
just get used to it over time. But
there is an issue on
like,
the agent
I
screen in
feel like far
particular.
more than most games, you practically need a manual to understand each character in ZZZ,
The,
and so
the
you have to spend a lot of time in the menus trying to digest exactly what the hell it is that this character even does.
the only piece of the UI that really drives me nuts like that is the agent screen, and part of it I think is for some godforsaken reason they made the icon that tells you what type of character they are gray on everybody, and it blends into that super stylized background. And so, at a glance, while you're still learning what the characters are and what equipment they need and what ball you want to stick on them, what discs are applicable to them, and what resources you have for leveling up you have available to see what characters you can level up. In this phase of the game, you cannot tell at a glance what and the icon's also itty bitty in addition to being gray, black and gray. Uh, it's hard to tell at a glance what type of unit a unit is. You have to eventually you get it memorized, but that's a bit of ways down the line after you've already got over the hump. And then furthermore, in the UI, they for some reason, whenever I open up any agent's page, if I just want to tab to the next agent, instead of that being the triggers like you would think, it's the bumpers, and the triggers take you through the pages of that agent's thing. It's backwards from what you would expect it to be. So
Take your word on it. I don't know. I don't really have any personally. I don't have any
and
expectations about that particular aspect of things.
and also the agent
I don't.
page is just agent vomit. Instead of it opening to one character at a time with a list on the side, you're just hit full face with the full list, and this with splash art and a pop out of the character on the left side for the one you have
I
selected.
feel my gut feeling is that they were trying too hard to distance themselves from looking like they were just cloning Star Rail and Genshin.
Yeah, I do not think this UI is very it looks cool the first few times you open it, but if I have to hear Ellen Joe go one more time whenever I press the agent button, time for some tail care, I'm gonna murder her. And her voice ain't bad. I just have to hear that every time I open up the agent screen to level up my
I'm still
dudes.
playing. I'm still playing in Japanese. I'm not going to go to English. Like sod those guys. Like the English acting is cancer. I want to add my stats to the people who just don't use it.
So yeah, that's the UI stuff and the gameplay stuff. Story stuff. I'm not far enough in the story for stuff to. It's just now starting to really kick off. But the story appears to look like it's going to be following a pattern of uh main story chapter that focuses on one group of agents. So the Cunning Hares is the first one in the prologue. Interlude chapters that don't have a fixed day duration. They introduce the day cycle system here. But as long as you complete the objectives, they don't you do them on. You can just rest on the couch and loop the days if you want. And this is tells the story of Bell and Wise. Bell and Wise being much more active in the story as characters than Stell or Lumine and their equivalents. So they're very much so characters, and both of them are goobers in their own special way.
I must mention that Stell's role in that she seems to have adopted in the current patch for Star Rail is she seems to think that her job is to be March 7th's hype man,
Can dig it.
and just this takes to this particular role with extreme glee,
I see.
regardless of what March 7th might think about. Like March 7th enjoys having her ego stroked from time to time, but you can write checks that March can't cash.
Yeah. Oh. So yeah. Um. And the next chapter of the story focuses on Bellabog Industries, and that's where I'm at right now with the construction crew that is rebuilding an area that gets wrecked by
Can't can't possibly be as depressing as Space Russia.
no. Uh, so this is a big point in ZZZ's favor. The story is very loud, very bouncy is the best word I could put to it, and gets you going right away. Even if nothing is super big going on, the only thing of note that happens in early-ish in the prologue is the proxy that you choose signs a contract with an AI way beyond what.
Igor.
Yeah, and this starts causing all kinds of shenanigans to happen and allows you to do things that you normally couldn't. In addition to Bell and Weiss being proxies that can explore the hollows and guide people through them, that are way better than most people at doing that, and that this is also a legal activity. So they're working under the nose of the law.
What are you talking about? They just run a video rental shop.
Yeah, how they get away with that, I have no idea. The very first character story you'll encounter is after, because when the AI hijacks them, uh, their Faith in account gets deleted from the internet, and they have to use the the fake setup account that they made, the low level account, as their new primary account, and so somebody approaches them and has them ask them to pretend to be themselves. They have to pretend to be Faith in for a job. That's our first character story for Soldier 11, I think. Who is every character in this story has been taking their goober pills every single morning. They are all ridiculous and over the top. Every single personality is big, huge, and bombastic. There is no chill character at any point in this story. You may see a character's design and think, oh, maybe they're no, they're not. They are just as insane as everybody else. And if you are into the character aspect of stories, you will enjoy a lot of what's going on here. I don't know how far the story goes currently, so I don't know if there is a meta any more meta hooks besides Fairy the AI and the Hollows themselves that are going to keep us stringing along as with a overarching story like there are for the other games.
I mean, it is Hoyo. Like they have never not done that.
So, but it could be a running thing. It could not be. I'm just not far enough to tell you yet. But I do like the presentation of the characters and them having bigger, more in-your-face personalities that allow you to really attach to them faster than some of the stuff like in Genshin or Star Rail. Like there is no we need to go have a date with Ayaka and go play with Toma.
Well, I mean, there wasn't in Mondstadt or Liyue either.
Yeah.
Like I think that's not really a fair comparison. Like Inazuma, I feel is an anomaly of some sort. Like something happened. I don't know what.
Well,
Something happened.
Inazuma is where I picked back up when I got back, and it's been too long for me to remember Monster Liyue very well. But I definitely feel that ZZZ has a bigger, louder presentation with its characters.
Well,
And
I mean that's probably true, but that seems to me like an aspect of style. Like it feels like they've gone for more sort of like a My Hero Academia um type of aesthetic. Like every character is larger than life. Every character is very bright and loud, and everyone is intent on stealing the scene whenever they enter.
when a man from Bellbog Industries has a bro off with a backhoe, and after punching each other, he fist bumps the bucket part of the backhoe. That's the
It's the
type
guy
of
with the pompadour.
I think he has a pompadour. Name starts with an A.
Uh, if he doesn't have a pompadour in reality, he has a pompadour in spirit.
Yeah, like when he's brofist in the backhoe and the backhoe brofists him back with no operator. By the way, this is just the backhoe. This is the type of character story you're getting into here. That's actually pretty close to where I left off the story.
I see.
So, so yeah, I've enjoyed what I played so far. I intend to keep playing it. I intend to keep it as my main mobile game, but still play it casually. There are a lot of games I want to get to right now, and things I want to do. And I just have to play triage with them, and just I'm not going to rush any of them. Um, Work has not been permissible for me to just sit down and game nonstop these past several weeks, this week included. Even though I got more week than Vol, Monday and Tuesday were murder, and the rest of the week wasn't light either. They were more normal, but they Monday and Tuesday especially were really bad. So I'm just taking games at the pace I can right now, and I'm just trying to enjoy my time with all of them, because goodness knows I'm spoiled for choice right now, and we know that droughts do happen when in your within our wheelhouses, while not in the gaming industry at large. Games in your wheelhouse can sometimes dry up for a bit, and so I want to not stretch it out, but just enjoy the time I've got with the games that I want to play right now, instead of blitzing through them. If I get a free week to just go ham on, I will, but that's not happening anytime soon, because of the way work's been going, and it certainly hasn't happened in the past month, where I've just been way too busy to marathon game.
I just feel sort of like weirdly troubled in my very soul over the fact that FF just doesn't figure anymore in that equation.
No,
Pretty much.
FF is just the only thing we've got for an MMO style game that we all actively play, and also lets me use a controller.
But like, there's an alternate universe where it was not Work Lamar, and we're super hype about FF instead.
Yeah, I know,
I'm annoyed that I don't get to live in that universe.
I know, and that'll be a good segue point. I'll save, because we're already at an hour 45. I'm almost through with Trails for Daybreak. So I'll be
Still okay?
say what?
Is the truck still okay?
Uh, the truck survived. It turned out that the person that was waxing the truck uh, was the head elder of the Chinese mafia that was waxing Van's truck. And he really did wax the truck.
I see.
And surprisingly, there was no sinister motivation besides trying to blackmail Van by going, hey, I waxed your truck. You owe me. But I will say I'm continuing to enjoy Trails Through, Trails Through Daybreak. And there are points in this story where I can feel some members of the translation team gnashing their teeth in their little California screechy voices because they don't want to type what's on screen, and I can almost feel them trying, but it's so egregious in its messaging that they just can't get away with it. That, and they got at least one localizer that's kicking them in the teeth and genuinely loves the series and keeping them on task. So it's managed to survive and be a genuinely good experience the whole way through. In the Cold Steel games, there would be multiple points, because the casts were so large mostly, but also because it had a different writer than the Sky and Crossbell games. I would just enter skim mode on some character stories, or on some side quests, where I would just read with only a brief delay before button press, regardless of how long the text was, just to get the gist of things, because I just didn't care about what was going on right now, and the game was going to take eons anyway to complete. And even with turbo mode, gotta get to the end, because these are full JRPGs. We're a month into Kuro no Kiseki, or Trails of Daybreak. I have not felt that once, and you'll notice on my playtime, I'm still not done with the first game. Now, a lot of that is time I just left the game. I did just leave the game open a few times, but not that much. Probably got about 12 to 15 hours total leaving the game open. That's still 60 hours of play over the course of a month that I put into this game, if you look at my Steam page. And I'm still not done with the main story because I'm not skimming anything. The writing's good enough that I want to watch and read everything again. Uh,
what is the main character tier list? The
Van's
the series now.
Van has solidly slotted himself into number 2 with a solid competition to beat Estelle. He's the first real competition Estelle's got. But I like Van a lot as a protagonist. They made a smart move, I think. Now that the series is older, they've aged up the protagonist to be in his mid-20s. We're introduced to him in his mid-20s. He already is established at his job as a Spriggan, which is basically a fixer for the region of Calvard that you can hire him for under the table work and he'll keep it confidential stuff you can't go to the police or the bracers about because they're gonna arrest you if it's illegal enough or make it public if it's bad enough. Van won't do that. That's what Spriggans do. They'll keep it hush hush and he may stab you if he thinks you deserve it.
And he's not a head pet.
He does get some head pats in. They can't help himself. It seems to be an affliction that eventually infects all Trails protagonists, but thankfully his potential head pat ease, at least some of them are not on the head pat train. So he's at about 5 now. Well, 4 in one attempt, so we'll call it 4.5. So he does get pretty firmly rejected for one of them. After a deep heart about their personal troubles and the way life goes as you get older and how he needs to buck up and deal with his problems and Van's and after Van gives his rousing speech, he starts to reach over and give a head pat to the 18-year-old delinquent man. We get a knock the hand away and go, nah, don't you? What is his exact quote? Oh, get out of here with that shit. So we have head pat rejectors in his vicinity to limit the head patting. So yeah, I'm enjoying it so far. I'll give full breakdowns on the gameplay and story as much as I can as the weeks go on, but it gets a hard recommend. There have been very few stumbles in both the voice direction and the localization. We've stubbed our toe a few times, but nothing that's going to cause us to trip and fall over. And they're very brief.
Being forced to directly compare it to Wook Lamart.
Yeah, so here's the problem. I'm really enjoying my time with Trails Through Daybreak. And because I know I'm not immune to the phenomenon of after you do something, experience something terrible, the next thing that's even slightly better will seem significantly better. I don't know how much of this is feelings I will keep as time progresses, or feelings that are based on the game's merit, or based on the merit of it's just not Wook Lamont. Because, oh boy, you want to talk about a bad story, bad script, bad localization, and bad voice direction, that game's got it all. Or that
even got bad hookah walker.
Yeah. Well, does Thavnir have bad hookah water? But yeah, Trails of Daybreak does. In fact, where? Hang on. What if drugs were mixed into the vapor ingredients for the hookahs? Is a direct quote. And yes, there were drugs mixed into the hookahs. So yeah, I enjoy Trails Through Daybreak a lot. Heartily recommend it if you are a fan of the Trail series. People are going to tell you it's an okay point to start here. Don't. No.
Why do people say that about everyone though? Like, I may have heard a lot about all of the other Trails games and so on and so forth, but I've only played Trails in the Sky first chapter, and I am not going to move anywhere in the series until I have played Trails in the Sky second chapter, etc., etc. I'm going to play them in order, and I can't imagine anybody who would bother to play these games who would not play them.
Yeah, there are multiple factions moving in Calvard, and one of them is the Bracer Guild in Calvard. And you may remember in Trails in the Sky a certain Calvard Bracer that's on a trip to Liberl to hunt down Walter the Direwolf. And
Ugh. I think of him as the Ugg guy because all he does is punch things.
Yeah, he is a major feature of the Bracers Guild in Calvard, and you're not going to have a clue who this guy is unless you played the Sky games. You're also not going to have a clue who the little white-haired girl is unless you play the Cold Steel games, because she's one of your main party members in
Frankly,
that game.
frankly, I didn't have a clue who he was when I was playing the Sky games because he plays his cards pretty close to his chest about who he is and what his role is back home.
Yeah, he's basically the strongest bracer in Calvard, although he's not.
How many years? How many years before? How many years before that is first chapter of Sky?
I looked this up the other day, but we can check. Let me pull up my personal browser because I think I have the Kiseki Wiki bookmarked after we had that discussion. Let's
Because
see.
he seemed like he was by far the oldest character in the cast, other than like the actual old people.
Yeah. None of you guys.
But if you go out of his way to say, "Oh, he's the strongest bracer," well, that means that you're sort of directly putting him in the same category as certain diplomatic incidents.
He's not an S rank bracer. They say he's close to being able to be promoted to one, but he's not Cassius tier yet. And
But there's no exam for S rank, is there?
no, it's not even an official rank.
It's just what happens when you're too much trouble.
Yeah, when you reach a level of notoriety and power so hard, so big that wherever you
There
go,
are political implications to you going anywhere.
yeah, when you are the equivalent of a walking natural disaster, if you choose to act, you get the S rank label. So he is 36 years old by the time of this game.
So
And
in anime terms, that's like practically dead.
yeah, I'm trying to find they got a timeline somewhere on this wiki that I've looked at before.
Why didn't he have any kids? Everybody of that age in anime has kids.
Because he's a bracer. They kind of are married to the job. But
Isn't Estelle's dad technically a bracer?
yeah, but he quit being a bracer uh, to have a family, and then he took up the bracer. Well, he was originally a military commander and a bracer, and then the Bracer Guild made him said you can't be both. So he chose to be a bracer after the war with Empire, and then he quit being a bracer for a bit to be a family man, and then he took up bracer work again after he lost his wife, and has and he's been a bracer since until the end of first chapter, where they drag him back into the military again.
Right. So Erebonia basically it can exist as a political power because of its high technology, and Labelle can because of its almost perfect political stability. What's Calvard's shtick? Since they just had a rebellion, in my timeline, they've just had a rebellion of some kind and are trying to establish themselves as a republic.
So my timeline was a bit off on when that rebellion happened. It happened 100 years before the start of the game.
That's basically no time at all, as in country terms. Like you're the American Republic is about to collapse, and they've only existed for what 250 years or something.
Well, at the 100-year point for Calvard, things are already falling apart. That's a key plot point in Daybreak is how because Calvard is a republic that is so huge with diverse regions, it's got the equivalent of America, China, Japan, and the Middle East in it.
Yeah, that didn't work well for Soviet Russia.
Yeah, it's on the verge of cracking at the seams. The only reason they say it's held together right now is because after the events of Cold Steel, Erebony has to pay reparations to Calvard, and that helps their economy stabilize and keeps life good over there. But as soon as that reparations stop, and they brought it up multiple times, everybody's afraid this country will collapse.
It's just going to immediately turn into civil war along every front.
Yeah, because there's all kinds of racial and cultural animosity between the various groups that live there.
What
and the
what is
people
the motivation for keeping it a single country?
It just is that way right now. It didn't used to be. It has been unified and broken up multiple times over its history. It just at the moment is a unified country.
Usually, when you get a unified country like that, there has to be one of two things has to happen. Either you have a conquering force from the inside that forms an empire rather than a republic, or you have somebody from the outside who has vastly more military power who declares that they're going to be a republic now, which is sort of like the global American empire approach to things.
Okay, I got
And,
our
and,
answer to
and
our question, by the way. Ren was 11 in the Sky Games, and she is 18 in the Daybreak game. 7 years have passed.
right. So I'm sort of struggling a bit with how does the Calvin Republic arise as a political entity, and what is the motivation for hanging together as a political entity? Were they just like allies of convenience during the war with Erebonia, or what?
Uh, the Calvary Republic, that whole region has a history that they start to get into in these games, but they have not. I haven't finished the game yet, and they're setting it up as like the history of Calvary will become very relevant next game, kind of deal.
Because republics are inherently unstable.
Well, yeah,
Like
that
they usually arise out of instability, and they disintegrate either into empire or into warring states.
but yeah, we don't know where they're going with it yet. Just that currently the foundation of the country is cracking. So there's a
Because they don't want California to be part of their union either.
yeah. So there's a yeah. I can't get into it without spoiling too much about the setting on what the status of each nation is. Big part of the
Do
game.
the chests have jokes?
There is
Disappointment.
there was no coded "this chest is empty" message for the 3D games. In the Cold Steel games, while Xseed did the first two of the so we got chest jokes in those games, but they had to go in and manually code it in as a new feature.
See,
And the Crossbell games had them because they followed the same type of programming as Sky. Sky had them, but the chest jokes arose as a unique quirk of every single chest having its own ID for a message that would pop up that just would read, "This chest is empty." And the localizers figured out they could put anything they
oh,
wanted in
so
that
there was
box.
basically there was a space there for reasons that nobody could understand, so they decided to put something.
Yeah, because otherwise it was just copy pasted text of "this chest is empty" in Japanese over and over again for every single one, but each one had its
They
unique
they
item
weren't
slot.
so they weren't all indexed to the same default message.
Yeah, so they're like, well, why not? Make him a joke. So for the Sky games and Cold Steel 1 and 2 and the Crossbow games, you get chest jokes, but after that, the chests don't tell you that they're empty when you.
And then the only chest joke you get after that is optimal bounce vector.
That is surprisingly accurate to the Japanese, apparently. But yeah, this game is a lot more crass, not to a absurd level at all, but it is definitely more crass and more uh, aimed at an older audience that would get subtle, dirty jokes.
But the dramatically reduced amount of head patting.
Yeah, the but I think in general it's a huge step up. They've got the old writer Kondo back on as lead writer for these, and it shows. The Cold Steel arc had a lot of hiccups in it in terms of storytelling and a lot of issues with its production.
I don't know why, but for some reason, Reen in my mind is just classified as Kirito.
Well, he's not an edge lord, but he certainly has all the traits of one. If you just instead of being solo solo boy edge lord takes wears the black coat and works alone until he meets the nice girl. He's the accidental harem protagonist with all the powers that type of edgelord hero would get.
That just seems like such a tumor in the rest of the trail's continuity. That you've got this one particular period of time where this story tries to be sorted out online, meets Persona, and then it goes back to normal.
Meets Gundam, but yes,
Well, I mean, they already had Gundams in Sky, sort of.
yeah, you get to he goes really mech for that one, and we promptly dropped that thankfully for Calvard. I was getting quite sick of the Divine Knights and the Panzer Soldats. Uh, but uh, but yeah, the this game is focusing on the why the Orbital Revolution happened and how just out of whack it is that technology could progress this fast, and the nation of Calvert
It was
itself and
just
how
like
unstable it is.
wasn't it just like Tita's granddad did a bunch of stuff or something?
Tita's granddad was a disciple of the dude that did.
Oh, okay.
He made a discovery with with what are called prototype ornaments. They're not artifacts that the church hunts down, but operate similarly. And through research on these, found a way to create orbital energy that allowed them to spiral their technology into super crazy land. And how
And then
that's
Speen,
say what?
and then Speen happens.
Well, if they did, it would
So that's
be
why
better than Speen.
that's what happens when you discover orbital energy. Apparently, you then decide you're going to create AI constructs of every person who dies.
Except
That's just
they
a natural follow-on from orbital energy, isn't it?
except even from the Cold Steel games, they've been heavily hinting that the overuse of orbital energy and using it as a resource doesn't have no cost at all. It's not like Electrope where you can just pull it out of your butt and there's no cost to it. It's actually destroying the planet by starting in one location and
Well,
spreading outwards
and
as what they call
from a certain
desertification.
point of view, Electrope did destroy that entire planet
It
because
did.
most people theorize that what they fail to elucidate specifically is that the calamity of Levin was caused by the Electrope Wars.
It is possible, but yeah, they there's a whole region of the planet that is a ever expanding desert that has been growing faster and faster at the same rate orbital technology develops. So it's thought that they're literally sucking the planet force out with, and that it's an unnatural force that's not native to Zemuria. That's its use is either making
Well,
it sick or draining it,
isn't that like the burn?
pretty much. So that's at least addressed in universe and laid as a future plot point that we may or may not thoroughly explore because they said they're 80% done, 80 to 90% done with the series. They've only got one more arc and then the finale to go.
I got spoiled. I saw a preview picture of the latest Kurono Kiseki game, and it had the truck still in it, so the truck must be okay.
Yeah, even
I
even
mean,
I mean, the last
to
time
be
Van had it
fair,
wrecked by the direwolf, he just got a whole new one. So it's
I mean,
possible the
like
truck could die.
Anya's and that were in it as well, so I guess I was spoiled on the characters, but the truck was okay.
Yeah. So uh Van's debt to the he gets in the Prince of not Saudi Arabia in his debt, and the prince's way of repaying him is to send him a big old truck mod that lets him convert the back of it into a van for dragging around his employees.
Which a ever increasing number, I'm sure, will attach to him.
Yeah, and so far everybody has stayed dead that's died in this game. The only not stayed dead is a holdover from the Cold Steel games that came back and was supposed to be dead. In fact, we saw him die in a flashback explicitly. So Cold Steel's nobody dies in Cold Steel continues to rear its ugly head, but otherwise everybody stays
I
dead.
am slain.
Yes, very much so. Cold Steel has a real bad habit about not killing characters that are supposedly killed. But yeah, Cold Steel had a lot of issues with its writing, and most of it stems from the fact that they just underestimated how big the scripts they were writing were, and they could not cram all of the script into one game. Like Cold Steel 3 and 4 were supposed to be one game. And that would be like a 400-hour JRPG if you did all the side content. And so they had to split it up, and they had to split it up at a kind of awkward moment. So if you were like me, and Cold Steel 3 was where it stopped when you first really got into the series, we're in for quite a cliffhanger. But thankfully now you can just get. And it looks like they're back on track with Trails of Daybreak. So, but you definitely should not listen to anybody saying there is a entry point other than Sky. These games, you have to go Sky, Crossbow, Cold Steel, and then Daybreak. You will not appreciate any of the reveals or character cameos that appear, and you certainly won't appreciate anything in the wrap-up games that of Sky the Third and Trails and Reverie that tie up loose minor story ends that involve the entire cast that came before the points that are entered at.
So has Olivier shown up yet?
He's been mentioned a few times, but he has not made a personal appearance. They seem to be limiting the personal appearances of characters to only ones that they want to be significant to Calvert. So Ren's appeared. Uh, Fee has appeared, one of your playable classmates from the Cold Steel games. Zen has appeared as your Sky representative, other Sky representative, and Risha has appeared from Crossbell. But that's as far as playable characters go that have made appearances.
Anytime Olivier shows up, there's almost certainly going to be a disaster that will happen within the next couple of hours.
Well, yeah, he's usually scheming, and if he's somewhere, it means stuff's about to go down there. So,
like in pragmatic terms, he seems to be the most powerful member of the Imperial family, since disaster always follows in his wake.
yeah, he's I think his sister, after the events of Cold Steel, takes the takes the next in the line of succession before
I don't
him.
think you could. Like, can you imagine what a headache it would be for Mueller if they tried to get Olivia to stay put on the throne?
Yeah, so the story has gone out of its way to make sure he will never be emperor. So, but he's his uh his wedding is brought up multiple times as an event that a lot of characters went to and met at. He does eventually get married.
Who did he marry?
Shara.
Oh, he managed to actually land that in the end.
Yep, got there.
How's he going to survive? His liver won't be able to take it.
That's okay. He's got the bracer girl with the sneaky drug, and he's got the other bracer girl that has a stronger liver than even Shara does. He'll be fine. But yeah, bit of a character
I mean,
spoiler.
that's actually kind of admirable. Like, I didn't expect him to stick to it like that. He seemed to basically flirt with anything that had a pair of boobs.
Yeah, but he by all accounts is a dedicated monogamous man now that he's married.
It's a dedicated Shira simp.
Yep. Like all that stuff he was saying to her in Sky, he apparently genuinely meant, and he wasn't that. There's a reason he wasn't that fluffy with every girl he met.
Or did he just wear her down?
Apparently, they just kept interacting over the years, and you see glimpses of it, but Shara doesn't make an appearance until Cold Steel 4. And then at the end of Cold Steel 4, they're just like, oh, by the way, the ending scene is them getting married. after a dramatic love confession, and they talk about everything in the prelude to the final dungeon. So, bit of a character spoiler there, but some incentive to go through and see see how it got there one day.
Because I'm pretty sure that she was not that impressed by him initially.
No, but the tail end of the events of Sky's second chapter helped a lot to win some respect for Olivier from her. I don't know if you've got to that part yet.
I've only played the start of second chapter, so I'll probably have to. Well, I'm sort of stuck in a conundrum, right? Because I'm committed to playing them all through in order, but Sky second chapter, the beginning was like pounding nails into my dick. It was really hard, and I don't remember what happened after that. But that means I have to replay the start of second to keep going.
Yeah, Kurt's just a nightmare. He's gonna
I
wall you.
I don't want to, because it took me forever to get through it last time.
Yeah.
And so I'm really antsy about having to start it over. But I didn't play that far, so it seems like it's too much effort. Because I basically did the start and then I did a little bit. And I'm wondering if maybe I'm at the level where just reading the journal will be enough to refresh me, because most of the beginning stuff doesn't matter all that much. It's, oh, well, and I'm doing some training to get my certification type of thing.
Yeah, I can just summarize what happens. Joshua leaves,
and
Estelle needs to get training, bracer training, goes with Annalise to the bracer training ground, and Kurt kicks your ass.
I also have this weird anxiety about the third chapter, because it sounds really weird, like on paper.
It is, but
every time I've heard it described, it sounds really weird. I'm like, this doesn't actually sound fun. This sounds weird.
So it's more focused on the gameplay side of things. for that.
And I don't give a toss about the gameplay in
And
Trails. Like, it's the least interesting part.
you're the things you're working towards in that are you. The reason it's weird is because you're operating with the Gralsritter, and the Gralsritter are a section of the church that deal with artifacts that'll become more important as you get towards the finale of second chapter. And artifacts are weird; they do weird crap. But the other purpose of it is to wrap up loose storylines they either are going to use to foreshadow stuff that's going to happen in the future, or tie up minor loose end stories that they don't intend to come. So you'll find what are called star doors in this otherworldly area where most of third chapter takes place, and these things exist just to play cutscenes like that and tell you side stories that wrap up characters and their arcs, or finish off what they want to say with a character. Just give you a character moment or foreshadow stuff. It cannot be skipped, but the Star Doors can if they're not your jam. But the main game is definitely required reading, even if they do forget Kevin exists.
He the crossbow guy?
Yeah. Kevin's the protagonist of the third chapter.
Right. Like, because I was just sort of like introduced to him in second.
Yeah.
Like, that was where I stopped playing, was where he joins the party, basically. And he was like, well, who's this guy? Okay. The idea of going to him as a protagonist after that, after having been with Estelle for so long, just seemed kind of weird.
Yeah, you're going to get a lot of motivation to figure out what his deal is by the end of the game. In fact, at the very end of second chapter, you're I'm not going to tell you what happens there because that's major spoiler. It's not just a character moment. That's all of second chapter spoilers.
I mean, I really enjoyed first chapter. I've played through the entire thing twice, in not using turbo. I've just played through the whole thing to experience it again for a second time. But yeah, it's the second chapter was hard to get started on. Like, getting kicked in the balls at the beginning like that was hard.
Yeah, Kurt's just mean. Just do not play that game on hard. Set that thing to normal, or if you just want to see the story, easy. Although,
I did it on hard. I regret it. I deeply regret it.
Yeah, I did the first game on hard and it felt appropriate. Sky second chapter gets infinitely easier after you get past Kurt, but Kurt is just going to kick you in the balls.
I beat Kurt on hard. It just took me like all day to do it. Sort of thing.
I know. I did it too.
I don't want to do that anymore. I think I'll go back to normal, thanks.
I can have a shared experience of Kurt kicking us in the balls. Yeah.
Like, how come he's not S ranked? It felt S ranked.
What rank are you, Kurt? Kurt Narden. He is B rank. You're probably B rank. You're probably not even A rank. Actually, I think he is A rank. Yeah, he's A rank. Okay. So
that's a little bit more justifiable, but it still hurt.
Yeah. So he's.
If he was B rank, I would just cry.
Yeah. So
Like, how powerful is Cassius if that was B rank?
Yeah. Well. Yeah, Cassius is special in a lot of ways. So is the other known S rank of the guild. With well, I don't know if he ever accepted the unofficial promotion, but Cassius or Arios from the Crossbow games is the other S rank we know about. And he is also a walking natural disaster. He just keeps himself confined to Crossbow for them.
Yeah, it's always been something on my short list of things to play. It's just that I was pretty traumatized by Kurt, and so that basically I got stuck at there for so long that it killed my momentum when I was getting started.
Yeah, my only advice to you is just set it to normal and go punch Kurt on normal. You'll be amazed how much easier it is because of the way stat scaling works in that game. Where you beat thresholds and the bosses don't do any more damage to you.
Because I was like, I thought, oh no, if this is setting the tone for this game, I don't know if I've got the energy to play it.
No, normal is significantly easier, and I think it'll be a better play experience for you. uh, and is a you still have to like kind of pay attention to your court, so you have to have something that works that kind of works in normal, but you can bumble your way through it. And but yeah, hard's just gonna kick your butt in the second chapter. Well, it'll kick your butt in the beginning. Eventually, you get access to enough courts where you can put some really OP stuff on all your characters, and it won't matter. But until then, you're you're gonna get kicked in the nuts. So so yeah, that's the Trails series. Oh, your other hump is gonna be the Cold Steel game. Crossbow games are good as a good follow up. Um, Sky the Third's weird, but I think it's worth sitting through and playing it. Even the optional stuff in it. It's all going to be most of it will be relevant later, or not a waste of your time. The stories are pretty good for the most part, and even if it does take place in Artifact Land, uh, it's going to be an okay time. Crossbow games don't have any complaints at all about those games. They're both great. And then you've got the Cold Steel games where you unfortunately will have to deal with rain, but thankfully there's enough of a supporting cast that you can probably latch onto a few.
And a huge number of waifus are available, and unfortunately, one of them is Reen's sister.
Yeah. Reen is still at the bottom of the protagonist tier list, and he is a good ways at the bottom.
I'm very tempted to go the sister route just out of morbid fascination, because you probably avoided it like the plague.
Yeah, I picked the first blonde haired girl I met, which is the one they start to tease a ship with until they abandon it. Uh, Van has a very obvious love interest that is not any of his employees. It is, and it's his childhood girl racer friend, who is also his age. So
he hasn't managed to advance this relationship at all.
He did once.
Didn't go so well.
Yeah. Basically, they got together in high school and were dating for a year and a half, and then Van's life happened, which is a walking train wreck, and forced them to separate. And so he came back as an adult, and by then they met up in the capital city because they both happened to be working there, and they're rekindling their past relationship now after what happened. But though she still blames Van for actually leaving, so it's complicated. But they did try.
I don't know. It seems like he's only got ice for his truck.
It does. He does multiple times say it's his one true love. So he may cheat on Elaine with his truck eventually. He needs to keep that garage door locked. So yeah, that was way more time than I originally intended to spend on Trails to Daybreak. I'm enjoying it so far. I'm near the end of it finally. So I'll be able to tell you if it sticks the landing or not and sets up for the next game.
How many games are in that arc?
We are at the finale game for the arc is coming out next. So 3. One other thing I'll say: Trails to Daybreak marks an engine change between Cold Steel and Daybreak, or Reverie and Daybreak rather. And oh boy, can you feel it! There is no mini games in this game. There is not even a cooking system that is anything like the previous games.
It still will cry if she can't fish.
There is fishing in the sequel. And Van mentions multiple times that he would like to fish, but they didn't actually have the time to implement it. So Van knows how to fish, because all Trails protagonists can fish. But you cannot do it in this game. Yeah, there is even, you can tell they planned all the world and the routes and where they would go and stuff, because there's clearly like this area is where they will set a fishing spot later for come back to. This area is the casino where you'll do the casino mini games. There's nothing there. There's not even poker. It is just MSQ and side quests the whole way through, because they just did not have enough time with this engine swap and were not familiar with the engine. And the half of the combat system you will feel is you can tell they're still figuring it out. And apparently it gets way better in the next game. It's workable with what they got, but it's still it needs some refining, and there's a bunch of very stiff movements, but thankfully it's not skill based at all. So even though it's the action part of the combat, it's very stiff right now. But the fact of the matter is, we have clairvoyance on this series, so we can know ahead of time, as those of us in the West, that they do eventually iron it out and it gets better. This is just first game struggles with a new engine, but it's none of them detract from the main story they're telling. They use this time well to tell good, well written stories that really do a good job of fleshing out Calvert and the people in it, and I want to see where they go with it. So, all right, that was way longer than I wanted to spend on that. So, uh, you mentioned something that we should probably talk about while it's fresh in your mind as a first impression. Pull up my notes here. Accidentally mute the stream again. 1 week. So, you mentioned we did the raids last week. We can use that as a topic, or we can jump into other topics. Which do you want to do?
It was quite an odd feeling, that was. Because I felt like I was abruptly shunted out of Dawntrail and back into Final Fantasy XIV.
Yeah. So before we really jump into that topic, I want to preface most of my opinions with this. If these fights were in any other expansion with a passable story, this would be one of their best raid tiers. But the mar the story has left really makes it hard to genuinely appreciate some of the ideas they come up
with. Yeah, this is sort of like when you get to have a nice meal at the end of a really horrible day. It's like, oh, well, this is a great meal and all. But all that crap is still there that you went through that day, and you're going to have to wake up to it again tomorrow.
Yeah. So, while we can try to talk about the raid fights as raid fights themselves in isolation, and we'll probably do a little bit of that, you need to keep in mind that the whole Final Fantasy XIV experience has been very heavily brought down by Wuklamot and the general apparatus around her, that MSQ.
Yeah. Well, it's like Wuklamot is sort of like the most obvious sort of like point of badness in terms of her just miserable writing as a character. But the blast radius around her is the thing that I think makes the whole expansion bad, rather than her just being a bad character.
Yeah,
Like the effect that inserting this terrible character into it has had on everything else. Like what I heard her described as is a black hole Sue. Like a black hole Sue is not a conventional Mary Sue in the sense of just simply has everything that she needs to accomplish everything easily, but so much as a black hole Sue is a Sue that the entire universe warps itself around her, and every character warps itself around her in order to ensure that she A, remains the center of attention, and B, never fails at anything.
Yeah, you've got Alisei's infamous, well, this is Wuklamot's journey after all.
But no, actually, Squeenix, this is the player's journey. The player has to have fun here, not Wuklamot. Wuklamot's not a real person. Yeah. Wuklamot can't enjoy Final Fantasy XIV. Only the player can enjoy Final Fantasy XIV. And not a single player cares whether Wuklamot is having fun, because Wuklamot isn't real.
Indeed. So, we have raids.
We do have raids.
So, I've been yammering a lot. And you did the story more recently than me. Want to give them the setup before we jump into the fights?
So we've got this basically because the story is incredibly retarded. You go into Solution 9 and you murder both of their sovereigns in cold blood, and then appoint the unknown bastard child of their most hated sovereign as their ruler, in place of their most beloved queen, who you just murdered in cold blood and told them nothing about why it was justified. Also, you destroyed heaven, so that they've got nothing to look forward to in life. Pretty much You have become the worst nightmare for everybody in Solution 9 and ruined their entire way of life. In order to desperately attempt to cheer themselves up, they have decided to relaunch their Colosseum, so that at least they can distract themselves for a moment from the living nightmare that you have inflicted upon them, all in the name of Work Lamar. So, and this is pitched to you by an incredibly bombastic Lalafell. I don't know what Lalafell are called in that world, but it's pitched to you by an incredibly bombastic Lalafell with a suspicious moustache
And a cowboy hat. The cowboy hat's the most important part.
And he basically says that, oh, well, up until Zerilja came through and pretty much banned the use of souls for anything other than his military conquests, we had this arena where people would use the souls to do battle with each other. So we're opening this up again, and we want you to join in because you were able to kill the baddie who had us in thrall and also murder our queen, but we're not going to talk about that because we don't have plot awareness. And so we want you to join in, and you're like, you got to be kidding me. This is like completely anathema to my way of life. That's why I genocided everybody you care about, because you people are reprobates and we don't like you. But I'm willing to hear you out anyway, even though I've just destroyed your entire civilization for no reason other than I felt like it. And so they're like, yep, we're cool with that. We'll just allow you to do all of our fights 8v1 instead of 1v1 because reasons. And if you win, we will allow you to free the souls rather than leaving them in our library because that makes sense. Okay. So the worst part about the premise is basically the fact that it exists in Dawntrail.
Yeah, it's got to work within the idiotic main story that we've had presented for us, and that ties a whole lot of the setup into justifying why this can even happen in the first place. And given that restriction, I think it was a smart decision by the people writing the raid stories to just blitz past it as fast as possible to get us out of the Dawntrail storyline.
Yeah, like they don't want the story to be occupying the same territory that Speen operates in. They want the story to be occupying the territory where Hulk Hogan is making a speech at the RNC.
Yeah.
Like that's where they want to be. That's the story that they want to be. They just want to be well shot of all the rest of it. Unfortunately, the rest of it is asinine, and it's sort of like at the entryway, you've sort of got to push through the hanging creepers of vomit. That is the rest of the story before you can get to the raids. So yeah, and you go in there, and they basically re-engage with Final Fantasy 14 business as usual. So you enter the you swagger into the arena. Inexplicably, everybody is okay with you deciding to do 8v1, but this is just you can be waved away as an aspect of them being like supremely confident in the peasant tier combat capabilities of anybody who doesn't use souls as a weapon. And you get introduced to a bunch of 2-bit thugs who think that of themselves as great, but are in fact the bosses of the next few fights. So the first one you meet goes by the moniker of Black Cat, which is a less elegant moniker in English than it is in Japanese, but you've got to make do with what you can. So this is all going to be spoilers territory going forward, I guess. Black Cat is basically the little sister of a Arcadian legend, and she's basically does cat things. That's her thing. She does cat things, and she's sort of like this particular weight class is sort of up and comer. Everybody has seen her sort of meteoric rise to being one of the promising new combatants. She's got sort of like a a patrimony of sorts, although it comes from her elder sister, so she's got like a family reputation for, oh, these people are great in the Arcadian. Funny thing about her sister, she was really good, but nobody knows where she went to. She just sort of disappeared just as she was hitting the peak of her career. Nobody really knows exactly why. Anyway, let's move on, because this is the sort of thing that a fantasy story will leave dangling. And she's going to be your first opponent, because she's sort of like the rookie champ. You need to, in order to establish your credentials as a rising star, you have to be able to take on the other rising star. And provided she doesn't whomp you, you'll be able to start making a name for yourself. So you go in and do that. Okay, first fight, Black Cat. Black Cat is a very solid, I feel, starting fight for the first tier of a new raid expansion. I feel
Yeah.
like she's sort of pitched exactly right for that purpose.
I think there's enough mechanics here that you can easily intuit what's going on for a first tier with her left-right mechanic. Although the marker is
You say her left right mechanic, but this is sort of the thing, right? This tier appears to adore left right mechanics.
It do, and it also adores fruity markers, which are the standout here in that her arena is made of a 4x4 set of glass tiles. So in her throughout her fight, she will do various mechanics that will damage the floors and cause it to crack. And any spot that is cracked, if certain other mechanics hit it, one other one in particular, it'll destroy that panel, and whoever's on it will fall to the floor. If a panel is not cracked, it can take a hit, and not whoever gets hit onto it won't fall through the floor. So the way she facilitates this is one of the more creative combos and mechanics for a first fight. I feel this is a good mechanic in that it allows you to learn the fight better throughout the weeks and do it, and you'll be able to feel yourself getting better the more you do it. And it is a fun mechanic with a nice bit of flair that will cause pug groups to have a laugh every single time they go into it, and just looking at who goes in the drink. Because the first thing she does is she'll target random tiles throughout the arena with the 9S style. I'll show you what I'm going to hit in pattern, and then I'm going to hit them all in sequence. So she does that, destroys some tiles, cracks some other ones, and leaves a couple alone. And after you survive that, Cowboy Hat Man repairs some of the missing tiles and replaces them with full health tiles again. And then she starts chucking people with a really fruity marker that's really funny. And you are thrown relative to her direction, not quite a full tile square away, and need to have your character land on a tile that has no damage done to it. So it'll show you the arc you're going to be tossed at, and it'll be red if you're about to go in the drink, and it'll turn green when you've got the marker lined up from her position to you to the panel, where you'll be safely knocked onto OK.
Did you ever play that weird little children's game where there's a giant plastic flower and there's a bunch of little spherical beads with a metal bit on one side and lots of depressions in the flower, and you scatter the metal things onto the giant plastic flower and they all settle into the depressions, and then you, as the child playing the game, you have this weird plastic headband which has got a big plastic thing that sticks out of it which has a magnetic bee on the end, and you have to use your head to position this bee that is on the end of a long springy plastic thing. You have to use it to pick up the little magnetic balls and then put them in your own sort of collector thing.
I believe I have seen a game of this type played before, but I have not played one myself.
This is like that, except the arc lands behind you. And it's very awkward to understand how to move the Sonic thing to begin with.
Until you figure out that it's only relative to her current position, not her direction or anything else, it's going to be really wonky to land. But I just love the fruity fallen marker that it uses for the fallen man that's going along the line.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this first half of this tier is about having a laugh, basically.
Yeah, the first two fights especially are just having fun. So yeah, and that's really all there is to Black Cat, other than left right mechanics and
Yeah.
alternating cross mechanics, and sometimes she'll do the slide.
The slide.
That's about it. A fairly simple first boss, but a pretty fun one.
Well, I mean, that's what you want for a first boss because you're trying to ease people into the raiding for the expansion. So you want something that is sort of like consistent, that has got mostly mechanics that are, if not familiar, at least very compatible with what you are familiar with, plus something to add a little bit of extra spice.
Yep. Right. So take
Right.
us to the next fight.
Next fight. Okay, so you beat her and she's like suddenly your biggest fan because I guess she just really doesn't hold grudges, but she realizes that you basically don't know what the hell you're doing and you're basically a meathead who somehow has managed to beat her without using any souls, which is just a bizarre idea to her, but she warms to it and she's like, okay, so clearly there's something to your ability to fight fundamentally that doesn't tie into whether or not you've got a powerful soul at your disposal. So obviously I need to hang around and figure out exactly what makes you tick. And so in order to do that, I'll just basically become your manager slash trainer slash hype man slash whatever.
Notably, she is your hype man and your corner coach instead of you being hers.
Yes. Wuklamart is nowhere to be found, and I have not seen her in this storyline at any point.
In fact, she is so not Wuklamot that she is the opposite of Wuklamot.
Yeah, apart from having bad taste and hairdos.
Yeah, her hair color
Seems
is
like
the
a
only thing
reasonably
that's a
nice
problem.
girl. So yeah, you basically you hang out with her for a bit, and then you sort of like get ready for. She introduces you to her sister and her family gym and so on and whatnot, and you get ready for your next match. And your next match is against the worst Southern Belle impression that I have ever seen, who is one Honeybee Lovely, who uses a bee soul basically as her source of power, and the entire internet appears to want to simp for this woman for some reason. Possibly because they have been very stridently encouraged to by the game and its mechanic.
Simping is a mechanic here.
Yes, you are well, no, simping is a mechanic, but you're sort of supposed to try and avoid being a simp. Like,
Yeah.
don't simp.
Well, we've all seen how many people get stunned in
They,
that fight.
they're trying to convince you that simping is bad, okay? Leave internet idols alone. Don't simp. So yeah, basically you go into a fight with her. You have basically no interaction with her beforehand. She's not a character per se. She's just a boss. And yeah, so you have to fight her, and I don't really see exactly what her fans see in her specifically necessarily, but yeah. At any rate,
Got
her
boobies.
her fight is interesting, and I've heard people say in this week that you can make a very cogent argument that she is harder than the final boss of the tier.
I could say
And
it.
savage.
Just the latency on near automata bullets and having to deal with that is enough of a shoe where I could see that, and especially harder.
Yeah. So yeah, people love her. They love her song as well. Her song has got heaps of covers online. People really enjoy it. But and the lyrics are something else. If you've never looked at them, you should.
Be my honey, be lovely.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. Bit of a crazy fight. There are some mechanics in there that are quite simple, but unfortunately, none of them are the problem. The problem is when things start going pear-shaped, when she decides that she's going to hold alive
What
and everybody starts to simp.
the pink phase.
The pink phase.
So
So basically, everybody gets a gauge above their head. Now, This gauge I found incredibly useful because I have difficulty seeing discerning visually other players on the screen, and the gauge made this in certain respects a lot easier because there's an enormous gauge with 3 hearts on it above everybody's head, and you can see everybody else's gauge, not just your own. And this gauge is basically how hard you are simping at any given point in time. And you are obliged to simp. Nobody gets to go home without simping. It's just a question of how hard.
And half the raid, or 6 people in the raid in one case, will have to get a double simp, but not go for the dreaded triple simp because there are towers must be soaked. They apply an extra simp stack.
And
So
should you fail to soak the tower correctly, everybody will start to simp.
yeah, and that's not good because if you get 3 stacks, you're stunned for 12 seconds, and there's a lot of AOE in that phase.
Which applies simp charges.
Yeah, I don't think you can go into simping while simping tier levels. I think
No,
it doesn't.
you can't fractally simp. However, all of this AOE, not only is it a danger to people who have fallen into simping, but it's going to cause people also to fall into simping. It's not 12 seconds though, it's only 5 in normal. I don't know if it's 12 in Savage or whatever.
It feels like 12.
Well, 5 seconds does feel like 12, yes, but it's actually only 2 globals. But yeah, it's certainly enough to get you killed if you're unlucky.
Yeah,
But
it's comprised
yeah.
of just a vomit of AOE standard telegraphs plus near automata bullets from the outside and the center. And the vomit.
There is a dance for it. There is a dance associated with it. Like in Savage, when they start to analyze these, it becomes a lot more obvious. But it's actually the party is functionally sort of like, in order to avoid it, you have to sort of like run in heart-shaped patterns on the ground.
Oh,
Like that's the way, that's the safe zones. Like if you take the most orthodox route to the safe zones, it causes people to run in heart-shaped patterns on the ground.
I see. I've not looked at the Savage versions of these fights, so I don't know what's going on with
No,
them.
no, I have but and I don't know for sure that that's what is being depicted here. But I've seen like the sort of the crude animatics people that create to demonstrate the appropriate strats for given abilities. I've seen them with on Twitter with like Japanese text because it's Japanese players discussing it. I don't know what it says. I haven't checked, but they will show like, oh, these are the positions of people and these are where the all of the different, if you move here and pause and then move here and then pause and move here and then pause to let each thing resolve in turn, then basically it draws a big giant heart on the arena.
I see. I get you. All right. So yeah, the rest of our
The
mechanics.
simping runs deep with this one.
Yeah, the rest of our mechanics are not really notable. It's mostly just the simping phase of the fight, and particularly the near automata bullets, because as always with near automata bullets, because you just it doesn't matter how good or bad your latency is. The challenge is finding where your latency is at that particular moment to know where the bullet actually is.
I've resolved that getting hit by those is basically an inevitability, and I just hope I don't get hit by too many.
Yeah, I just do my best to stand at a position where none of them are going to cross my path, and then just hope for the best as I sprint to a safer spot. Because even with a good connection, you have no idea where that bullet's at and how close you can cut these. Because that is just, I really wish they would drop the near automata bullets as a mechanic because they're just too latency dependent, even on a good connection. But aside from that, the rest of the fight is not really super notable, but fun enough.
I think it's one of those fights where it's about the vibe.
There's certainly one of those, all right. I'm not a fan of that song,
Yeah.
so this fight doesn't stick with me
I
super
don't
hard.
I don't like the song in the conventional definition of the term like, but I feel like the song is sort of appropriate.
Like I can take the song because we're only going to be doing this place like maybe once a week for a little bit. But if I had to progress this place on Savage, I'd want to tear my ears out.
I don't. It doesn't upset me that much. I don't. I'm not so profoundly offended by it. I think it's sort of quaint.
Yeah, I do like that this fight. Aside from the near automatable, it's finding out ways to maintain uptime on the boss as a tank is fun, and you'll get better. That's something you can continue to get better at as the weeks go on to give a bit more zest to your, bit more spice to each week you do the raid. There's something to improve on, and there's all the other mechanics are cause they don't feel bad. Basically, is what I'm getting at. There's nothing notable about them, but nothing in there is bad.
This has definitely been, though, based on responses, has been fan favorite boss
Yeah,
of the tier, and I think that it's largely because people like to play into the aesthetic.
yeah,
Like apparently, it's a thing that occasionally, if you're doing a pickup group savage or whatever, you will just get the guy who aggressively runs into all of her mechanics so that they can simp for her.
yeah. I can see that. All right.
It's just a thing that happens. So you deal with her, and she's like one of the fan favorites, and you sort of waltz out of the Arcadian, and her fans are outside, and they're rather upset because you've shamed their beloved, and you've also got your own fans now, and they are enthusiastic to see that you're this new rising star who doesn't use souls but simply uses your own abilities to fight, and your 7 friends, which go unmentioned at this stage. And so you hang out for a bit, and then you get to your next fight. Your next fight is the brute bomber. So the brute bomber is the heel in this tier, um, and he's basically the current reigning champion of this whatchamacallit, the light heavyweight tier. I don't know why there's such a thing as the light heavyweight tier. That doesn't make much sense to me.
I think it's supposed to
Like
be a joke. I think it probably works better in Japanese
maybe. Um but he's sort of the reigning champion, and what he's notorious for as the heel is not following the rules.
or Riff
Um
Bot.
yeah, he's a doper. Um He's not interested in playing fair. He will not only will he use his King Bomb soul, but he will also drug himself to the eyeballs to give himself an edge if necessary.
Yeah, the cast is literally called doping.
So everything that this guy does pretty much is incredibly orthodox. It's largely a case of executing familiar conventional mechanics correctly, but the overriding priority at all times is not getting hit by his lariat, because he really, really wants to hit you with his lariat.
Yeah, and this also means finding ways to maintain uptime on the boss if you're in melee. While this guy dashes all over the place, he's my least favorite boss of the tier because of this. There's so much. Okay, it's mechanic time. I guess I'll stop hitting the boss if you're melee. Or can I try and squeeze this in? Do I think my movement's good enough? And this is something you can work on and optimize throughout the weeks, but it is not as fun as the other types.
Well, there's a low ceiling on what you can optimize, though, because ultimately and fundamentally, when it comes right down to it, you're going to be at the mercy of which side does he pick.
Yeah, and the only way I have had any luck dodging that lariat consistently is to when he picks his first side, you have time to run over to the opposite side. You have plenty of time. Is when it's just him hitting one side only, it's not that big of a deal. It's whatever. It's just a mechanic to dodge. It's when he starts doing the double lariats after 50%, where every lariat after the first is now accompanied by a second lariat that can be either the same side or the opposite side. And the only way I have found to consistently dodge this is to stand at the edge of the first lariat's path, because it's a little bigger than half room because it includes his body as a hitbox, and be running towards the center as though it's going to be the opposite path, and keep your eyeballs on him the entire time. And if the other hand starts glowing, you immediately turn around. and you just be ready to react to it. Anything else has not worked.
Yeah, it's mostly a straightforward fight, basically based on the good old classic. Some bombs will explode in the first wave, and some will explode in the second. Find ones that will explode in the second, move to them. Wait for the first to explode, move to them, and then overlapping that mechanic with other types of more conventional AOE's. This is like the sort of the standard approach. The lariat is the key thing to this fight. If you've almost certainly done a fuse based mechanic before, they're pretty common. It's just the lariat and the fact that it will be followed up by a second one, and you need to focus all of your attention on avoiding the lariat. Like, you just take whatever else you need to if you have to, because you need to not get hit by that lariat. It's bad for your health.
Yeah, if you have to just stop deeps in the boss, I do it in that fight.
Yeah, I didn't bother to try and maintain uptime. As soon as he started doing double lariats, it was like, okay, my priority is not to get tagged by this.
Yeah, but everything else
Right.
about him is super straightforward.
All right, so your conquest of the brute bomber is your ascension to the highest point on the light heavyweight tier. So you go to your ceremony to be awarded your kudos as the top of the league at this particular level, this particular weight class. Brute Bomber's not particularly pleased about this. He thinks it's not fair that he had to fight you 8-on-1, and it's sort of hard for me not to see his point of view in that regard, because you kind of did fight him 8-on-1. You have to have a pretty delusional idea about the power of souls in order to not see 8-on-1 as a bit iffy. But yeah, so he's upset about this, and he tries to challenge you to a fight immediately, 1-on-1, and you're like all for it. It's like, come on, come at me. But this particular fight gets interrupted rudely by the Neoteric Witch Wicked Thunder, who crashes the party and immediately challenges you to a exhibition match. Now, because Wicked Thunder disappeared, she doesn't hold any position in the league anymore right now, because she vanished at the peak of her career. This being, of course, your personal simp Black Cat's elder sister, who disappeared when she was really hitting her stride. And so she comes back in and she challenges you to a fight. And the manager of the league was like, well, I guess since she's so highly placed, we can let her have an exhibition fight. It'll be good for ticket sales, etc., etc. But she can't participate in a real fight because she's been disqualified from the league due to vanishing without warning. So yeah, you have your grudge match with Wicked Thunder. So this is, in most respects, a relatively conventional boss fight. What I found most of all was that Ari's descriptions of her abilities were almost useless without seeing them. they're not easy to describe in a conventional way, but the vast majority of the damage that she deals and attempts to deal come through left-right mechanics and lines of various sorts. So those are relatively self-explanatory. Like, she will do left-right, and she would create clones who also do left-right, and then a series of left-right, and many left-rights, left-rights, left side, even many left-right. Avoid the left-right, and creation of clones to do left-right. Lots of left.
Yes.
The iffy thing, I think, really, there are two things that I found particularly iffy in this fight. One of them, and they're both connected to the same mechanic, where she summons a cannon. And when she summons this cannon, she will point it at part of the arena and destroy 3/4 of it, leaving a narrow strip down one edge. I had a great deal of difficulty trying to figure out where she was pointing before the telegraph showed up. It just wasn't clear to me at all based on her model. And Fortunately, this particular shot out of her gun is not a kill shot. This is sort of pulsing damage. So even if you're still standing in the danger zone, and nearly everybody seems to always be standing in the danger zone, once she starts firing, you're not going to die immediately. You're going to start taking chunks of damage. And
Yeah,
so if you just keep running, you'll eventually get to the safe zone.
it doesn't even put a vuln on you, so they clearly expect you to take a pulse.
Yeah, and I think that it's not so much that they expect you to take a pulse or two, so much as they expect you to not be able to read her. Because while technically it's readable where she's going to shoot it, it's kind of hard to read depending on like wherever you might be standing. Unless you happen to be perfectly standing opposite her at the time that she starts it, it's really hard to tell where she's even pointing it.
And bosses
You
love to
mentioned that
teleport around the arena this right here.
she is technically tilting it to the left or to the right, but it's very hard to tell.
This is
And
something
the
that would
other
take
thing that
weeks to pick up on naturally if you didn't notice it or think about it.
if you the next part that I found iffy was when she does the next phase, which is where you've got now a narrow strip of land that everybody is crammed into, and she stands in the center of it and will fire a series of shots, one ahead of her and one behind her, in some randomized combination. So it might be like forward, forward, back, back, or forward, back, 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 or forward, 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 back, back, or whatever. I don't remember how many shots. I think it's like 4 or something.
Yeah,
But
it starts
what
at
I
3 and
found
then 4 and then goes to 5.
what I found is that it's virtually impossible for somebody on my latency to do by using the visual cues. By the time you can tell that she's going to fire it, it's too late to get out of the way. There's just not enough time. Because she will tell you in advance, using various indicators, the order that she will do it, but then she will deploy the attack in sequence after all of the alerts are given. So you know where you're supposed to move, but the timing of it is difficult to establish, especially if you've got latency. If you don't have latency, then you can just look, okay, so she's going to fire at the front, okay, I'll be behind her, and then when that shot's done, I'll move in front of her, and then when that shot's done, I'll move behind her. I found that just did not work for me. The amount of time allowed was not sufficient for my latency. What I did find worked was for me to listen to the sound of the firing, and as soon as it fired, as soon as I heard the sound effect go off that, oh, I'm a fire on my laser, I would move into the beam because the damage is applied at the moment the telegraph disappears, right? In each case.
Mm-hmm.
That's true for basically every attack in Final Fantasy XIV. As soon as I heard the crack of her firing it and the damage applied, then I would move into the beam. If I tried to react to it visually, then I would wait until the beam had appeared, as opposed to the gun starting to glow as about to fire, which is where the actual damage is dealt. So yeah, I had to basically get hit by that several times to work out what the correct cue was to follow in order to avoid getting hit by that. Fortunately, this one doesn't generate a a um a cheese buff.
Just a heavy
This
dot.
one generates a dot. So that again is one of those things that
Oh. Please hold, people. The internet connection appears to be having a few shoes. The OBS connection is fine, however, I don't know where Volacel went. So bear with us while I put us on break. Apologies, folks. We had a brief technical outage there, but we're back pretty quick that time.
Discord decided I was its enemy.
Yep. So,
But I don't know at what point I disappeared.
you just finished talking about the audio cue you had to use for the forward and back with the.
Right. Yeah. So they use sustained damage as the punishment for that, which seems to me like another concession to, much like with the other ability, that we know that you can't visually quite do this. So we're going to punish you for not being fast enough, but we're not going to actually kill you for it because we know that this is going to be unreasonable for some players. The reason why this gives me a little bit of hope is because it means that at least somebody at Squeenix realizes that latency is real, because Yoshi P is famous for denying that latency has ever been a problem.
Yeah. So so yeah. And that's pretty much her fight aside from the final phase where at 20%,
Where she just wigs out.
yeah, she just perma deletes 3/4 of the arena and just spams stack up markers and spread markers over and or line stack ups and spread markers over and over and over again uh, until either you or her falls over. So the healers
I
get over
expect
text or she falls over.
I expect this would be much more pressing and savage. But as things currently stand, it just brought back bad memories of Speen,
Yeah, but I mean,
where you've got a sort of like semi-trivial final phase for no real reason.
yeah, and but as far as if you isolate the raid story, I can see what they were going for with a big desperation tech because we have not mentioned the whole reason she broke in to fight us.
Yeah, I haven't looked at any videos to see what her actual final phase looks like either.
Yep.
Because every fourth boss has their special final phase in Savage.
So yeah, it does. But so yeah, that's the fights. Uh, and after this, there isn't much story to go on. It turns out she challenged us to a fight because she wanted our soul, and she says as much during the fight and before the fight. She wants to munch on our soul because the overuse of the animal souls has, or the Ixian soul she uses, has corroded her own soul. And it turns out
Well,
that,
more importantly, as far as the immediate story goes, is that the Arcadian has been running a scam on competitors for years.
yeah, they tell their family and the people around them that they get to retire to this upper level of the Arcadian once their tenure is over if they rank high enough at the end of their career, and they get to live out the rest of their days happy up there. But no, what actually happens is the overuse of the souls they use in the arena causes your soul to corrode and start falling apart, and you
And so
that'll be bad
so
for you.
they stick you in jail for the rest of your days as your soul rots away so that you don't die, in order to avoid anybody realizing that you've actually passed away.
Mm-hmm. So when uh when cat girl's sister at the cat girl gym, because for our characters it is the cat girl gym. The When she found out about this is that her soul was starting to corrode and this is what they did to people, she booked it to try and find a cure for herself, and the only thing she could find was find a soul of a strong warrior type person to do the munching on, and you can
Well,
repair the damage.
to me, the text implied find the soul of somebody who's rejoined.
Yeah, it's not explicitly said that way, but a strong soul can mean a few
No,
things.
they didn't say a strong soul though.
What did they say? I forget the
They
exact
said
word.
a dense soul.
Oh, okay. But yeah, that could heavily imply rejoining. It's not explicitly said, but
Because remember, they've been around the rejoined for 30 years now.
oh, that's right. I forgot. I forget about the stupid time loop, or not time loop, but time compression effect there, or dilation, I guess in their case. But
No, she wants to eat your soul, and she's pretty unabashed about it.
yeah, she is. We punched her in the face pretty good, and she realized she's not strong enough to take it by force herself. And she just
Well,
continues to be like,
the one thing that rustled my jimmies is that she basically claimed that if she was not ailing, she would have been able to take us easily.
I don't know. That's pretty standard smack talk for somebody that's unrepentant.
I know, but it sort of rustles my jimmies because we've been subjected to it throughout the entirety of Dawntrail. Like, this has been the standard explanation for everything. Oh, why were you able to kill Trogdor? Oh, it's because Trogdor was weakened. Why were you able to beat Galuljaja? Oh, it's because Galuljaja was weakened. Like, this is always the explanation in Dawntrail. They never use any other explanations.
Yeah, I had managed to isolate this quest series by this point pretty well from the rest of Dawntrail story. We'd put enough distance there, especially the first half where it's the most egregious.
I mean,
So,
what I'm trying to point out here is the sort of the legacy that Dawntrail is using.
hmm
Like, I mean, well, I mean, that's not the worst part of the legacy. The worst part of the legacy, of course, is like, how am I ever going to persuade anybody to play FF14 ever again when I know they're going to have to go through Dawntrail?
yeah, yeah, I get that cutscene skip button ready. But uh, but yeah, overall raid story perfectly workable.
Perfectly Final Fantasy 14, unlike Dawntrail.
There's potential for them to really go somewhere with this if they want to, and even if they don't, the premise they've got is given us a venue for really fun and creative fights. Um, Overall, good first raid tier.
I mean, what the writing team and Yoshi P really need to do is to lean into this, because this is what the player base, broadly speaking, has latched onto as the avenue of redemption, to prove that this development team is still capable of producing a story.
hmm
You are not going to be able to save Wuklamart. End of story. You cannot. The hatred that people have for her is well established now. You can't undo it. It's too late. But you can move people's focus over to something which is done better. And your venues for this are your deep dungeon, your outdoor end game zone like Bosja, your raid tiers, your alliance raids. Just ditch your MSQ. Make your MSQ follow-up patches about what's going to happen in the next expansion. Leave Wuglamart exiled to her palace. Focus all of your writing on other content.
Yeah,
People do not want more Wuglamart.
I hope the editors for 6.3 onwards are furiously sitting there with that delete key, just undoing Wuklamot dialogue boxes.
Like, Control F Wuglamart, delete, 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 delete.
Yeah, I do not think it's realistic to hope she will be gone for 6.1 and 6.2. But
No, I'm hoping that they will push her into the background. It's like, oh, I would love to help you guys, but I'm busy with affairs of state now because was totally gotten over my head when it comes to this. I can't just run off and let Kona run everything, so I've got to learn how this is done.
yeah,
End of story.
yeah. Uh, Basically, by 6.5, they'll have no excuse.
Or by 6.5, we'll be looking for the next expansion. That's too far in the future.
Yeah,
But I hope that they don't try and bring her in as the new Scion.
oh goodness, I think that would be it for the game. They did
Yeah, that
that.
would be the game over. Nobody would pay any attention to the story ever again. It would be over for Final Fantasy
You'd
if they
have the
tried to make her a recurring fixture.
you'd have the hardcore raiders stick around for a little bit in the next expansion, and then as soon as they realize the player base is dried up because the MSQ has become garbage, they're just going to be your community of 10,000 remaining players that all MMOs devolve into.
I mean, it would grieve me deeply if that happened, but in a sense, I think it would also be a good thing, because it would be a very, very visible indicator of what crappy writing can do to a Titan.
Yeah,
I mean, Shadowbringers, end of Shadowbringers, beginning of Endwalker, people thought Final Fantasy XIV was unstoppable.
yeah, and there's some hiccups with the main MSQ of Endwalker, but overall it's a good conclusion, and Shadowbringers knocks it out of the park. And just the post Endwalker until now has been disappointment after disappointment, just getting worse and worse as time goes on.
It's largely for the same reason as well. Like, the biggest problem with Zero was the same ultimately, in kind if not degree, as the problem with Wook Lamart, in that the character was always pointed at her, and everybody else's character was distorted in order to fit her purposes. and then she mysteriously just becomes a great hero at the end for no reason. Like, what? Why? I didn't realize what that was actually presaging until Work Lamont happened. It's like, oh, there's somebody on the writing team who thinks that this is just how it goes, who does not comprehend the sort of the rigors that Ishikawa put the characters through in when she's like mapping out the story as a whole, and just that person, whoever they are, thinks that becoming the hero protagonist is just something that happens at the end of a journey. It's not the product of anything. It just happens. And so it happened to Zero. She just became the hero. Because. And Work Lamont just becomes the hero and goes from being kidnapped by random bandit thugs all the way to being able to defeat this sort of like imaginary abomination robot thing in like completely dominated dream space because reasons. She's just so Work Lamont.
While roided out on soul juice.
Yeah, like there's no logic behind it. She just becomes the hero because the plot has gotten to the point where this person is supposed to become a hero. Like they both have the same problem. It's just that Work Lamont was Zero played out over the course of a whole expansion as opposed to a handful of patch stories.
Yep. So we will see. I really hope they pivot before the next expansion. I don't realistically expect them. Certainly not next major story patch, and probably not the one after, to be able to start the Control F on Wuklamat, because they've probably already done
Well,
recording and stuff.
I'm not expecting them to do that. What I'm expecting them to do is throw their resources behind Outdoor Zone, Alliance raids, Savage raids, tier like no that content, the tiered raids, Deep Dungeon. Put your resources into the things you haven't fucked up yet. And if you dump your resources into Criterion dungeons and with no rewards, again, that shows that you are incapable of learning.
Yeah. You don't have the excuse of a split development team this time.
Yeah, people were willing to huff that copium back then, but you should have all your ducks in a row this time.
Yeah, you don't have.
Like I've said 1,000 times before. I'm 110% behind the idea of Criterion Dungeons. I want small group content that is challenging to do. However, I need it to be live content, not gimmick content.
Yeah, you need to give us a reason to motivate us to go progress them.
If they are going to be harder than Savage, and they were, why not give Savage rewards or at least something near to that?
Yeah, and
Savage last tier would be fine. I would be happy.
heck, even if there was just exclusive crap in there that you couldn't buy off the market board, the fact that it's
Needs to be
market
locked.
boardable is awful.
I'm completely flabbergasted that they would do that. Like, what is the point?
Like,
What is the point? That you might as well have just given a Gil reward.
let me just target myself for a second. See that title over my head? I can't buy that title.
Title's turned off.
They can. The audience at large can. I target myself. That title is not something I can go buy on the market board. Anybody that sees that title and knows about Deep Dungeon knows what I did.
I mean, even mine can't be bought. Like, people know that I at least did that much.
You don't have a title set right now, I don't think.
On my
Oh, there
phone,
you are. I got you. There you are. Okay.
Like, you can buy that one if you're willing to pay somebody to port you all the way down there, but you still got to somehow survive.
Yeah. Like, stuff that you can only get exclusively in the dungeons is important. Like, I can go farm 12 million gil over the course of. In fact, I need to get my sheep mount. I can go do that over the course of, like, a few weeks if I put my mind to it with not too much effort.
How much does that sheep cost anyway?
50 mil.
50 mil?
Yep, I'm at 38. I need 50 to get him.
I'm at 30. The guild bank, my retainers have about 4 or 5. The guild bank owes me 10. So if I wanted it, I'm about 5 million gil away.
Yeah. The guild bank's up to 12 total now with your funds still in it. But yeah, like Criterion just there's no gear incentive for us to go there. There's no exclusive rewards to go there. Like what's what's there to show that we've done it and be and show that yes we accomplished something.
But basically, what I'm saying with all of this is that the Creative Business Unit 3 is in pole position to show us whether or not they can learn lessons. People hate the classes, will you learn the lesson? People hate the story, will you learn the lesson? People hate Criterion dungeons, will you learn the lesson? That you've made mistake after mistake after mistake to the point where you're almost running out of mistakes to make, burning goodwill like it's going out of fashion. There are moves, very positive and obvious moves you can make to ameliorate the situation. Will you make them, or will you just cruise on the goodwill that you think that you have back from Shadowbringers era? This is your moment of truth. Your moment of truth is not when you're riding high, it's when things are about to fall apart.
Yeah, and I'm just to be completely honest with you, Mr. Squeenix, Yoshi P. If there was any other MMO out right now that let me play with a controller, I'd be jumping ship. If it was any good. Like that's literally the only reason you've got me here. The Wuklamont stuff was so bad, I was willing to abandon. I'm in a position where I'd be willing to abandon my cat girl and her once and future queen title, and Necromancer title, and all the other crap I've ground up from leading Baja and stuff, just because I don't want to deal with that anymore. That's where you're at. You've got to knock it that hard out of the park with all the post patch content for this expansion. And you didn't flub it with the first raid tier. That's good. While we did not go into any of the mechanics we especially liked in those fights because they're really kind of experiences you just get through, they are a good, solid, fun raid tier. Did good. You need
I
to.
don't know what Savage is like. There's only one Black Mage just managed to clear Savage for tier 4, so who even knows what they think about it, considering that's who Yoshi P tends to listen to. But yeah, like you need to lean into what you haven't completely screwed up. You need to understand what a lost cause looks like and stop using it as a sunk cost.
Yeah, you need to learn when to fold, basically.
Yeah, Wuklamat was a bad idea. Everybody hated her. They hate the voice acting in the English, especially. They hate the fact that they were written out of the story. They hate that the Scions were flattened into cardboard cutout supporters of a character that they don't care about. They hate the fact that the story had no stakes and was riddled with plot holes. They hate the fact that it basically dumped on the player's personal experience of playing the game. They hate the fact that it dumped on Final Fantasy IX as an inspiration. Basically, there's nothing to like about it. Everything that you can try and like about it is just theoretical and doesn't exist anymore. That was only ever an imagination. Like the idea of having a story where the Scions are in contention with each other. Like that didn't happen. It didn't happen. The things that people were interested in, you didn't let it happen. For whatever reason. I don't know what it was, and I don't care. This is all a lost cause. People hate these things. You need to identify what they hate and stop doing it.
Your biggest chance to save yourselves is going to be your next Baja equipment.
Yeah, because there's going to be a whole new story busted out there. True, it's going to be on a smaller scale than the main story quest, but so was Arcadian, and a lot of people found that Arcadian was a breath of fresh air. They finally were not being suffocated by Wuklamart, and were much happier for it. They've found things that they latch onto. Nobody is talking about Wuklamart anymore. If you look around on Twitter, nobody, other than those who are still posting negative things about her, nobody is talking about Wiklamart. Nobody is talking about the MSQ in any positive terms. People are talking about Arcadian. People are talking about mainly Honeybee Lovely, but they're talking about those fights that they enjoyed. They're talking about that story. They're looking forward to see where it goes. They're not talking about the MSQ. People don't like it. It didn't resonate with them. It was in many cases insulting to them in various ways. It was poorly written. It was poorly structured. It was unspeakably poorly paced. Like if that whole story was compressed into, one zone, then it would be trivial. Nobody would care. 2 zones, nobody would care. 3 zones, you're pushing your luck. 4 zones, it's already bad. 6 zones, you're screwed. Like, the people have given their verdict. You need to accept it. This is not a misunderstanding on the part of your player base. This is you screwing up. You need to swallow your pride and move forward. Put your resources where they aren't wasted. You cannot save Wook Lamart.
Yep. But the last thing to mention about this raid tier before we start wrap up the show is when this raid tier came out, there was a louder than normal contingent of people who were complaining it was too hard.
What?
Yeah. It made the rounds enough to penetrate into my YouTube recommends and people screenshotting and laughing at the barrage of posts on the website you're not allowed to go to.
I mean, it's slightly harder than last time, but I'd say it's probably only around about the same as Eden was.
Yeah. The thing is, I think they're coming off of last tier, and for a lot of people, last tier was the first raid tier they ever did, or last expansion was the first set of raid tiers they ever did. And the last tier, especially the normal modes, aside from Igdistis, were total snooze fest. And the babyface boss, the last tier.
I didn't. I thought that he was massively over telegraphed. Like, I don't think he was hard at all. Like, he had much longer lasting telegraphs than nearly every other boss in the game. I thought that he was a snooze as well. I think Carbuncle was harder than he was.
Probably, but yeah. But almost every single fight in the last tier on normal mode was sleepwalkable, boring. In retrospect, while we did our best to enjoy what was presented in front of us, I don't have any fond memories of any of the entire last raid set. Any
Well,
of the fights.
I do, but they were in a different context. They were not. I only realized it after the fact, but I was not consuming it as raid content. I was consuming it as sort of casual content. Like, I would log on at the end of a long day, and I would do like Asphodilus to relax.
Yeah, it'd be like,
Because
well,
it
it
was
was
so
literally
simple.
the thing we did before the show to wake up a little bit.
Yeah, it was so simple. It was so, like, it was methodical and simple. It was done in the same frame of mind that I would do a, MSQ solo duty.
Yeah,
It was not raid content to me.
for me, it was almost every fight was like roulette tier. The only fight where I had to pay a little bit of attention was Igdistis. And these
Like,
the
if you set this against playing like a healer in Tarot Paradigm's Reach, these are not the same game.
yeah, like when an alliance raid is outpacing your normal modes or your normal raids, you probably need to bump it up, and it seems good.
But
And most
I think that this current set is roughly on par with Eden.
yeah,
I
I'd
don't
say so.
I don't think I don't think that mm, I don't think that I don't think that the third boss is any harder than anything in Endwalker, and I don't think that any of these 3 bosses is harder than anything in Eden. And I think that the last tier of Omega is harder than anything in this tier of Arcadian.
Probably, but it's I'm only looking in retrospect to Endwalker mostly because those are the 2 raid series experience in the normal mode with or rather the raid.
I played just as much of Shadowbringers ones as I did of whatchamacallit, of Endwalker. So I'm relatively well versed in those ones, but I don't think that they were significantly. I don't think that anything in this grade tier is significantly harder than Eden. Like, the birds are particularly rough. The weird hybrid of Thancred and the old guy, what's his name? That was kind of rough. It had its rough patches.
Breaker.
Yeah, Shiva was kind of rough in its own way. Like, they all had their tough parts. But
Yeah. Uh,
that was definitely not the case in Endwalker though. Like Endwalker was pretty much a walkover.
it was a low density of mechanics, usually one mechanic at a time, very little overlap, with very long animations and telegraphs to play out. Where after you saw it once, this raid tier, you at least have to be awake. You have to look at what the boss is doing and check the telegraphs and react accordingly. Maybe they even follow a strict pattern that we'll realize after a few weeks, but it's enough to keep you like, oh, I gotta maybe sit up straight in my chair for these. But that is not that reaction that a significant number of people had. They were acting like this was the end of the world, and these raids are just too hard.
Yeah, they're probably a bunch of losers and trannies.
But yeah, it was it was quite funny. But I think these are pitched appropriately for a normal mode difficulty. I could
Yeah,
actually stand them to be a little bit
this is
harder.
about this is what I expect more or less from normal difficulty.
Yeah, I could maybe see a case for tuning them up just a little bit more mechanical density in some of their more down phases,
I
especially the
mean,
third boss.
that I can understand the argument for that. However, my counter argument would be that you will then have to deal with the other people who will be in the raid with you.
That is true. But I would not go much harder than this, but I definitely wouldn't go easier. I think they've got pretty close to the sweet spot with these, at least for weekly grind raid content that we're gonna have to grind if we get our decent for our main class.
Yeah, I'm not that worried about it. Like, I think that if provided that they don't listen to the wrong people, the in terms of the mechanics, they seem to be on to a relatively good thing here.
Yeah. So yeah, and that's where we're at with Inwalker with the raid tiers. We covered a whole lot of media, despite Vol not having much of a week, and I think it's about time we call it there.
Rightio.
All right, folks. Email topic of the week is the raid tier. So if you want to send us an email, feel free to do so. All right, you got anything for us to send us out?
Not really.
All right, we will see you next week. Sayonara. Bye.